Error. Error. What are we doing? Why am I on the left? Yeah. Why am I on the left? Yeah. I'm just gonna get a drink of water before we begin, okay? Alright, the lighting is definitely messing with the whole thing. Ah, there we go. That's more like it. Alright. That's more like it. That's the way. I like it. Alright. Alright. Ta-da! Oh my god. Alright, so everything is good. Alright, there we go. Mina yokoso. Alright, class, settle down and let me tell you a story. Interesting things are happening outside the home right now. There have been reports that there are gunshots. They're licking by the minute at ours at the Senate House in our little island. So, Lord knows what it means for the entire country politically. But yeah, people are shooting at each other in the Senate in our little island here in the Philippines. But anyways, that's not what we're here for. I took a break last week because I went into a double header event. There was a tournament which I didn't participate. I was just there to observe as a member of the National Council for tabletop wargaming or something. And number two, I did to this Asian Board Games Festival where I met like one of the OG TTRPG game makers in the country. Like, he has done it all. He has been there all. But you know what? He's part of the program. So, again, you guys, before I go off into an entire tangent, because you know what? I could do this like better with like whatchamacallit, with a visual aid. So that's exactly what we'll do. So, again, guys, thank you for the likes and subscribe. Because the good Lord knows what's gonna happen next in this country. Alright. 3, 2, 1. Bye-bye! Yeah, it's been quite... Hello? Yes, there we go. It's been quite some time since we've done this because, to be honest, I've just been feeling a little bit, uninspired. And when it comes to painting, I just like don't have it. One of the reasons why I skipped out on that tournament last week is because my veteran set, or at least the one that I use, or at least the units that I use was is slated to be painted. But personally speaking, I have this feeling that it was more of a thing that it was more of a psychological thing that I was avoiding the tournament entirely, and I sort of subconsciously did that on purpose because I honestly just I am honestly just not feeling it. So, anyways, now that we're back and I'm sort of feeling it, and Yeah, so for tonight, we're gonna be painting some stuff. Hopefully, you can see it. We're gonna be painting some stuff. At least this one particular unit, and this one I'm not so sure what to do with. But anyways, but before we do, check this out, right? We're gonna do a bit of an unboxing first, or I'm just gonna flex something I got from the Asian Board Games Festival. So check this out, right? The first one thing I got from the Asian Board Games Festival, there was this painting session, or basically teach you how to paint session from what you call it yeah, was it no war, was it War Games? What was the name of that speed paint? Army Painter, right? Army Painter did this event where they let you they give you minis, they let you paint for free and stuff. And here's the thing, right? I was so surprised that usually when they do when Army Painter, or some other organization or some other company does an event like that, or does something like that, they usually give out the cheapest minis. And what happens is you either get a Sigmarine. Here's one. You either get a Sigmarine, or you either get your basic Space Marine with the Flamer. You get either or. Usually it's the most disposable units. Usually it's the most um what you call it? Yeah, it's the most disposable unit and cheapest one. And yeah, I'm honestly looking for that particular word I remember from Rambo. But anyways, you usually get this one. But I was so surprised that Conquest was making a push, and they actually gave out this one. Just imagine, just look at the distinction. This must be what, 38 millimeter between the 32 millimeter. So just imagine the size differential between these two. And I did some digging. The name of this unit is this unit is called the Predator. Yeah, I know. Um in terms of naming convention, it's like a bit unfortunate. But check this out. This particular unit is a bit expensive, right? So I had just had to do like a part of it. I had to do like a part of it just so I could say that I participated. But I really wanted a free mini. Sort of made a mistake on the bronze and the gold. On the gold part, on the metallic part. I think it's a bronze on the metallic part of the crossbow there. But this is something I'm gonna have to finish in the long run, because I like attending these type of painting events, or painting side quests. So because I get free minis, and well, I use them as proxies when I'm playing. And here's the thing, right? Here's the pièce de resistance of the whole trip. Check this out. I managed to base, so apart from the it's not exactly that expensive, apart from the expensive mini provided by Conquest, provided by Army Painter. The next one that I got was A Cat's Dream by Toby Abad. He is one of our OG TTRPG game makers in the country. And check this out. It was autographed. Tell more stories, Toby. Here's the thing, right? He has a reputation. He's like one of the best DMs in the country. You can actually play this game using like a card game. He designed this game so you'd use your basic playing cards. So no need for anything. All you need is this, and then get your playing cards, and that's it. So, anyways, the story about I have of him is that I managed to get in into one of his sessions, and what happened was we played Inevitable. If I'm not mistaken, it was a one-shot game of Inevitable. And here's the thing, right? He was so good at what he does. I mean, his DM skills are on the next level. That here's the thing. I am like never going back. I am honestly never going back to to your regular D&D sessions with a random DM. It's like he's so good that the wait list for one of his games lasts for like months. It's like I managed to get in. It's like January, like July of last year, and I only managed to get in on one of his games March of this year. Because it sounds like the waiting list isn't really that long, but the problem is he's so busy. His time is so busy that he actually rarely gets one in. So it's really quite something if you manage to get in on one of his games. So yeah, I managed to. So apart from from an expensive mini, I managed to get in a free copy of his game. This is one from his collection, by the way. I remember he was talking. He was speak. After his talk, he was there for a speech and everything. And then he took out his bag, and then he looked into his bag. Oh, who wants a copy of Cat's Dream, one of my earlier games? I mean, me. It's like I elbowed like several people just to get a copy of this one. And anyways, all right, moving on. So basically, you managed to get a Cat's Dream by Toby Abad, and then I managed to get a Predator from mini of Predator from Conquest. Swear to God, one of these days when we actually get the money, um, we're gonna get like a better, we're gonna get like a better cam for this one. But you know what? For now, this is all we have. And you know what? It's been quite some time since I've been inspired to paint. So another thing. So that's my haul from the. So this is my haul from the Asian Board Games Festival. So another thing though, my order actually came, and I wanted to unbox this. Hold on, check this out. Ta-da! We have the Hedge Knights from A Song of Ice and Fire. Alright, so presently my Night's Watch army is already complete. So at this particular point in time, what I'm trying to do is I am simply trying to complete the mercenary or the neutral factions, because how you play that particular game is that you basically play with your you have your army, right? Fine, you complete it, no problem whatsoever. But you have the neutral units or the neutral factions, or what I'd like to call mercenary factions. Um, so and this is one of basically the neutral factions. So they're not ones that are, if you remember watching the TV series or if you remember reading the books, these guys weren't exactly tied to one particular faction. You can literally find them everywhere, lore wise, whether it be the book or the TV series. So, anyways, I decided to get like a box of the Hedge Knights for the simple reason that, well, the Hedge Knights just ended last year, and you know what? Just for shits and giggles, might as well get a copy of one, since they're compatible with my army, and might as well use them. Might as well get one for since I've only read the first installment, so might as well get one for, I don't know, for Pete's sake or something. I'm not really sure if I'm gonna be able to use them, but you know what? We're gonna unbox it. I already removed the plastic because I don't want to dox myself. The whole thing was so reflective. Like, I found it. Like, I could literally reflect my face. So, anyways. So, this is the Hedge Knight. So, as you can see, they're like, no better than mercenaries, but they have night training. What does it say? Dark Sword Miniatures. All rights reserved. All right. So, this is what they are. Let's just, give it a read. The Hedge Knights are objects of disdain across the world. Hold on. It's like I have been talking for so long. I have made like this mistake before. And yeah, yeah. Yep. Alright, so I just realized like I didn't exactly do a sound check before I did this. But anyways, why don't we just get onto it? Hedge Knights. Hedge Knights are the objects of disdain across the world, owing no land and little else but their arms and armor and horse. But in times of war, a few of these landless nobles can make for a formidable cavalry unit. With knightly training and decent equipment, a unit of Hedge Knights is an attractive proposition for any noble house looking to round out its forces for a coming battle. Very mercenary, yes? That said, While they're certainly more than a match for regular forces, Hedge Knights' equipment is rarely up to the same standards as regular knights. Still, men in heavy armor untrained war horses are usually welcome in any force. Alright, so as you can see, meant to be compatible with any army. So regardless if I'm doing the Night's Watch, this is what we get. We can actually use them. And I actually look forward to using them because compared to the regular cavalry units, the vanguards of the Night's Watch, they have the Sundering skill. So here we have whatchamacallit. Here we have well, the unit ray. It's how we play the game. You have the unit ray, and then we have several of the unit cards which are now outdated. Hold on, let me just show you. Because what I usually do is I usually use the Chinese ones first. Because one of the best things about this particular game is that unlike other systems, yeah, hold on. One of the best things about this particular game is that unlike other systems where you have to buy the update on an annual basis or in a semi-annual basis, all you have to do is basically just print out the yearly updates. All you have to do is just print out the yearly updates and then insert it in the sleeve, and then you're good to go. That's it. Just do the yearly updates and you're good to go. Hold on, I just realized this is plastic. Let's not dox ourselves, shall we? So hold on. Let's see first the update. Because as you can see, this box was probably more than a few seasons ago. So literally just printed out the update and just insert in the sleeve. So let's see the distinctions now. As you can see, this is a cavalry unit. So cavalry unit still the same. And then it has a Knight's Blade, it has Sundering, and then actually not much difference. 370, the Knight's Blade. The first distinction is that final when it comes to the final rank, the old one is rolling on 3s with 7 dice at full ranks, and then with 4 dice at final 2 ranks. But on the update, it is now 5. So armor value is 4, still the same. Courage or loyalty value is at 7 for the old one, but it is now 6 on the update. So with regards to the Knight's Blade, Sundering, still the same. And if you control the swords on the tactics board, before controlling attack die, the defender becomes vulnerable. Same thing, no distinction there. It has loyalty through coin. While you control this unit, gains +1 to the defense dice rolls and +1 to the morale test rolls. So same thing. The biggest distinction now for this particular unit is basically the Knight's Blade and the addition to the loyalty value. But here's the thing, right? Still the same actually when it comes to value. Not much difference except the second rank and Sundering. Well, one of the biggest reason why I got this particular unit is because the HBO's The Hedge Knight the whole Dunk and Egg series. Anyways, I'm gonna prime this and maybe we get to paint it in the future or something. And then apart from, here's the thing, right? One of the best things about this particular unit is that they can serve as officers or attachments. You have the Fortune Seeker or the Glory Seeker. I still have yet to print out. I have yet to print out the updates, but we'll get there. So basically, any one of these units can serve as an officer, either as a Glory Seeker or as a Glory Seeker or as a Fortune Seeker. So, anyways, why don't we just move on and actually see what's inside? See how they look like. Pam pam pam. Ta-da! Alright, let's break the curse. Because I've always been cursed that every time I unbox or every time I get new stuff, I get careless because I'm so excited that the moment I open the box, I break one or I drop or break one. I have no idea. It's been a curse. All right, so let's just be careful now. So again, this is the move. This is like the movement tray. This is like the movement tray, and we're supposed to put them like that. So for the first one, you have like a Don Quixote. I promise, like one of these days, we're gonna get like a better camera. But you know what? Just use your imagination. We have a Don Quixote level type of knight here. So place them like that. And then second one are guys wearing full helm. I actually have a copy of this unit. Because here's the thing, right? This one can actually by itself, this hedge knight by itself. Alright, here's the thing. One of the best things about this particular unit is that by itself, the hedge knights can either serve as a combat unit or, like I said earlier, it can either serve as an officer or as an attachment, either as a fortune seeker or as a glory seeker. So basically, you get one of these minis and then you attach it to another cavalry unit and they can serve as an officer. They are knights after all. So, anyways, what I did, so basically a friend of mine, what he did was that he basically bought the box of this particular unit, and then he decided to like divide it among all of us, and divide the price among all of us. So we each got an officer. So that's basically two officers for like the price of four. Of course. So anyways, so that's it. The second, the Don Quixote unit, and then the third, we have. Do they look the same? I have a feeling they look the same. No. They don't look the same. The main distinction is they're both bearded. Different helmets. They're just bearded. Different helmets, different armor. This one's wearing more of a mail. Chain mail, and different gambeson, horse gambeson. This one has more of a flare to this horse gambeson, whereas this one's horse head is all exposed and stuff. So anyways, and then finally we have the last one. Another Don Quixote. None of them shaves. I mean, that's the reason why they all look like, a Don Quixote-ish. It's because they don't shave. Alright. So they just have a tendency to all look the same for the simple reason that they don't shave, and they're all wearing helmets. Like one of the weirdest things about Night's Watch units is that they don't wear helmets. So a bit a bit refreshing for this one that you have like an entire unit. I know you can't see it properly, but I promise we're gonna get that camera. So with the movement tray and everything. Anyways, so that is us with the Hedge Knights units of A Song of Ice and Fire. It seems like we broke the curse. Because almost always every time I unbox a unit, like I end up, dropping one and breaking it. But anyways, it seems like, we got it the first time around. So yeah, why not? Why don't we just go ahead and do what we're here for? Oh, by the way, I just like wanted to show off. Like, hold on. I just like wanted to show off. Well, it's not like I'll be able to properly show it off, for the simple reason that they're too small and the camera sucks. But check this out, right? What was that? Weird War 247. I attended this bolt action event like a few weeks back. I wasn't able to properly show it, but this is supposed to be the Imperial IJA unit, an Imperial Japanese unit. First one, I have yet to paint it because you know what, I've been feeling a little bit uninspired, right? Even now, I just like wanted to show off like one of my stuff. Like I know, right now, here's the thing. I reinstalled Skyrim, and I really want to play. I mean, apart from that, it's been quite some time since we've done some Blue Archive. And the thing is, I have to admit that I'm still a little bit uninspired when it comes to painting, but at a certain point, at a certain level, we have to do this. Like this has to be done. Like inspired or not, this what was the name of that artist? He said, dumb, deaf, mute. I forgot the poem. Dumb, deaf, mute, crippled, you will create. Because regardless of what happens, if you truly want to create, you will. Whether or not you're inspired or uninspired. And you know what, I love the comic that went along with that particular poem, because there was this soldier in the middle of a war. His head, no, not his head, his leg was blown off, and he was still creating art or poem regardless of that particular fact. Now here is the thing, right? I'm just gonna give you guys, hold on, let me just get the paint. So, for those of you that have been here before, how we usually do this is that we're gonna listen to like a Warhammer story. For tonight, the Imperial Guard's Day Off is a pure nightmare fuel. Warhammer 40k. So, because how I usually paint is that I have either a Warhammer 40k or a Warhammer fantasy story blaring on the speakers behind me. So right now my point in doing this has been to share the entire experience with you guys. So yeah, that's the plan for tonight. And here's the thing, right? So one of my biggest dilemmas right now, one of the reasons why I feel a bit so uninspired, is because usually I paint infantry like this, right? These are either infantry units. Oh no, this is the thing that I got from the Asian Board Games Festival like 2 weeks ago. And anyways, I usually paint infantry because it's the Night's Watch, right? Infantry units like this, which is fine. Hold on, let me just turn on the lights so you could see it better. I turn on the lights. There we go. Can you see it? Can you see it? Can you see it? Can you dig it? Sucker. So yeah, you see it? There we go. There we go. Yeah. Oh my god! There's actually a workaround. Alright, so what usually happens is I usually paint infantry units like this. But like for example, this particular dude is part of the veteran unit. As you can see, I've already done the base. I'm just gonna wash it with like a snow base afterwards after I'm done. Because you know what, snow drifters, snow laden boots are fine. But here's the thing, right? This guy is what you'd call a Night's Watch veteran. He's part of that particular unit. There's like 12 of them here. And they're all attached to a pill bottle like this, because I'm too poor to afford the Warhammer or the games or the GW holder thingy. So what I do is that I just get a small pill bottle, and then I just put on some blue tack. So here's the thing, right? There's 12 of them. And then check this out. This is like a snow base. I just wanted to show you. This is a snow base because the base usually looks like this before it's painted. That's the snow base, and then this is the base when it's not painted. So that's what it looks like. My inspiration is the Russian Rasputitsa, enemy at the gates. Because you know what, after the Germans were defeated or turned back at Stalingrad, it was now the period, or spring was the time of the Rasputitsa, where the snow turned into mud and everything turned into hell for them. And then you put them in like this. And that's it. So basically that's how you're supposed to put the unit, and then push them around through the battlefield. So anyways, so this is a colored base. And I have yet to basically finish it off with a protectant. So, I'm keeping it in the back. So anyways, let's just put this back here. So, I don't mix them up. Anyways, the reason why I'm a little bit uninspired to paint is because horses. I honestly don't know what to do with the horses. So as you can see, hold on, let me see if you could actually see it. Uh, yes, there we go. As you can see, my biggest problem is the horses. I have no idea what their color is supposed to be. I have no idea what they're supposed to look like. And here's the thing, right? Look, that's a wave pattern on the base. I'm not even gonna do, because apparently the idea was, or the idea is, hold on, let me get the other units. The idea was, or the idea is, that you're supposed to like make them look as if they're like going through a swamp. Yeah, I have like several. Yeah. So these are the ranger trackers, by the way. They're like what you call it? They're horse archers by the Night's Watch. The idea is they're supposed to they're supposed to look like they're going through a swamp. And my biggest problem is that, number one, they're a ranger unit. I already have them intact. We've already done. It's like one of the first units we've ever finished. They're a ranger unit, no problem whatsoever. But the problem is, I have no idea what they're supposed to look like on horse. Like, I have no idea what's supposed to, like, I'm supposed to color their horses. So basically, my plan. By the way, this is like Benjamin Stark. By the way, this is not one of the boys. This is like Benjamin Stark, by the way. He's on horseback as the first ranger. He's not like just a regular unit. He's supposed to like serve as an officer. So, anyways, so yeah, I'm not really sure how to color the horses. And so the plan is, what I'm going to do is that what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint them one by one individually, because here's the thing, right? Either Palomino, Roan. I've actually been checking what the colors of horses, or their common horse colors are supposed to be, and I'm gonna have to do some mixing. And here's the thing, right? I don't think I am that. I'm not skilled enough to actually remember the combinations, or to actually come up with a combination. So here's the thing, right? How I usually do this, or how I usually do my units, is that they're repetitive. At a certain point, these units are repetitive. They're repetitive in the sense that they're gonna look the same at a certain point. And here's the thing, right? I primed this unit like a year ago, and they're starting to crack, and there's some mold marks, because I sort of left them. I sort of like, hold on, how do I properly do this? I sort of like, there's some mold marks, and on his what you call it, on his cape right there, you could actually see he's starting to mold over. And if you see at the bottom, some of the paint is starting to crack. I promise you guys, we will get a better cam. So I'm a bit, not exactly, I wouldn't call it uninspired at this point. I'd honestly call it what you call it, afraid. I am honestly afraid to actually mess this up, for the simple reason that the horse will has to be painted immediately. Right? Like, for example, if I'm gonna do a roan color, a palomino color, which is like um roan or palomino color, which is a bit orangey. So the horse is going to be a ginger. If the horse is going to be a ginger, I honestly don't know how I'm going to paint the tail or the mane. I honestly don't know how that's going to happen. How I honestly don't know how I'm going to the mane and tail, like the shampoo bottle. Like, I am lost right now. Like, I know how to dress him up. I know, like, we're gonna, because here's the thing, right? This is a ranger unit, and what we do, or at least my theme, my inspiration for this particular ranger unit, is that Navy SEALs, U.S. Navy SEALs, during the Vietnam War. But here's the problem. So yeah. So no problem for his pants. It's just going to be blue jeans and then green fatigues. And then that's it. Blue jeans and fatigues. That's it. But beyond that, I have honestly no idea how to do the horse. So we're just gonna wing it from here, all right? So, anyways, wish me luck because this is like the first time ever I'm gonna paint a horse. And one of the reasons why I haven't finished off this guy yet is because hold on. Yes, one of the reasons why I haven't finished off this guy yet is I have no idea how to do it. All right, the card. Where's the stupid card? All right, I lost it. I lost the card. There it is. Okay. The card was meant to serve as a reference as to what exactly he is, but you know what? And the thing is, guys, I'm not using Army Painter. I'm just using I'm either using Komodo, which is like a local. Is Komodo even local or Asian? Honestly don't know. Either Komodo and this one I know, which is local, which is Hero Paint. So, um, I don't know what to do with that. I'm a little bit afraid to mix them up. And like I said, a bit uninspired for like the past few weeks or like even months to actually get on with it. And yeah, I mean that me not competing in that tournament like 2 weeks ago feels more like it's like a real subconscious attack, or I did it subconsciously just to avoid painting these things. But you know what? Fine. Why don't we just get on with it? At a certain point, come on. I'm just trying to hype myself up. Come on. Uh, uh, on. I'm just looking for my inhaler, for my mint inhaler, and we can start. So yeah. So do your inhaler thingy. So just imagine if I was still smoking. I honestly, basically, I have one of these, basically nasal inhalers. So it feels like I'm smoking menthols again. And guess what, right? Instead of getting yourself a mug of hot beverage, like using a mug for your hot beverage, get yourselves like one of these. Get yourselves like one of these. So that way there can be no accident when you do actually, dip your when you actually, try and drink your danger water or something, or dip water. And that way your beverage would stay hot longer or stay cold longer. But you know what? If you're talking and doing this like me, might as well. Hold on. Just get the positioning. Question is, can you see it? Oh yeah, I guess this is a better view, right? This would work. Yes, there we go. Just a little bit off, so you can see me. Question is, we're gonna basically drape over the horse first. And I'm thinking, like, I already have a plan, or, I thought of something. It's gonna be Palomino. Palomino? Is that how you pronounce it? Palomino. Uh, Orangey, like, ginger-ish. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get orange first, and then we're gonna mute it with a little bit of gray. It's always gray. So we're gonna mute it with a little bit of gray. So yeah, okay. So again, why don't we hear the story of the Imperial Guard's day off is pure nightmare fuel? All right, in 3, 2. Oh, by the way, I'm wearing like cloth gloves right now, not the regular rubber gloves, because the sweat just piles up in the bottom or something. Ah, okay. So in 3, 2, 1. Too loud.
In the grim darkness of the far
Hopefully you
future,
guys can hear
there
it.
is only war.
There is only
And
war.
between the wars, there is brown stuff in a mess kit that tastes like grain that forgot it was alive. A skipping devotional recording you've memorized in your sleep, and 12 men in a tent built for 8, trying very hard not to elbow each other. Hey, I'm your brother from the void, and this is
Hello.
Tales from the Void. Today's story has no enemy, no demons, no Xenos,
I
no
hope
last
so.
stand. This is a Tuesday. Told by Private Pellin Court, Vendrake 91st, 4 years in, 0 promotions, 0 commendations, which in the Imperial Guard means you're doing everything right, because the moment someone writes your name on a piece of paper, something terrible is about to happen to you. This is what...
No. If you haven't been as far as I know, if you haven't been promoted, it sort of means that you haven't seen any action, because almost all of the audio books that I've heard going to and from work, a lot of these guys basically get promoted like fast because because there's no one else. That's how they get promoted, because you know the one above them dies. So yeah, oh yeah, by the way guys, here's the thing, right? My theme in actually listening to these stories is that I listen to the stories of regular people in the grim dark universe, because guess what, right? If you're imagine you're like a space marine. If you're like a space marine running around with the blessings with the blessings of the emperor, son of Gilliman, you know, wrapped in the most expensive armor, if you have the blessings of whatchamacallit, Sigmar. Cry me a river, alright? You're a superhuman supported by money and gods. Alright? I'm not interested in your problems. I am more interested in the problems of John or Jane Doe trying to survive this grim dark universe. So that's why I knew most of my stories revolve around in the grim dark universe, whether it be fantasy or 40k. Almost always about regular people. I never listen to the stories of, you know, space marines or sigmarines or whoever is supposed to be the next badass in the chapter. Anyways.
What a normal day looks like between battles. Roll call, where present means the Imperium's investment is still intact.
Roll call.
Breakfast, where the servitor ladles something brown into your kit, and you eat it because it keeps you going, and that's its only purpose. Latrine duty, kit inspection, waiting, more waiting, and a game of cards with men you care about but won't admit it, because caring is a kind of noticing, and noticing gets you hurt. It's the most ordinary story in the galaxy.
There we go. Ordinary
It might
people.
also be the most honest. Settle in. This is Tales from the Void. Let's begin. They tell you the worst part is the fighting.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's
The
not.
worst part is the day after the fighting stops.
So he's actually seen some action. So check this out, you guys. Check this out. Right? Here's the problem, right? I know there's a lot of like commission painters out there. And what they do, my bad. All right. So that guy's definitely seen some action. But here's the thing, right? I'll just pause it to just, you know, just to clarify this one. Here's the thing. A lot of like YouTube painters out there, what they do or what they'd say is that, oh, you only need like one brush. That's it. That's all you need, like one brush. That's all you're ever going to need. No, here's the thing. I call bull on that one, because they're gonna say that you only need like one brush, but the thing is, they're going, and then here's the thing, right? Okay, fine. You're only gonna need like one brush, no problem whatsoever. But here's the thing, right? The moment they say you only need one brush, they're suddenly going to come out with like the most basic space marine ever. Because look at this guy, right? He's like what, 90% plate armor? He has 90% plate armor. Of course, you're only gonna need one brush, because if you need more than one, it means you suck at painting. Alright? If you need like one more brush for your most basic Space Marine, with like 90% plate armor, you're definitely gonna need only one brush. But basically, if you're gonna do something a little bit more complex, yeah, go for it. Use more than one brush. Like for example, for this cavalry archer, like right here, for this ranger vanguard right here, usually when what I do when I'm painting your basic infantry unit, like this dude right here, this is basically an IJA naval unit. Honestly don't know if you can see him. Hopefully you can see him now. An IJA unit, a naval unit. Anyways, he's white. But the point is, his uniform is white. Anyways, the point of it is that I usually use a single brush, like the 5 zeros, and sometimes when when it gets a little bit broad, I use the 3 zeros. But here's the thing, right? I'm honestly going to use a 1 right now. Apart from these two, I'm gonna put. Of course, I dropped it. I'm gonna use like this one. Yeah, for. I'm honestly gonna use this one. This number 1. Hold on. Yes, can you see it? This number 1. Because this horse requires a bit. This horse unit is gonna require a bit of broad strokes. So, yeah. So, anyways, so why don't we just move on with our story?
You're still alive, and you don't know what to do with your hands. You've been squeezing a trigger or a shovel or your own teeth for so long that when someone tells you to rest, your body doesn't understand the word. You sit on your cot and you stare at the canvas wall of your tent, and you think, right, this is rest.
So he survived, but none of the officers or NCOs were killed, so no promotion. Alright.
This is what rest is. And you wait for the next thing that's going to try to kill you. My name is Pelin Court. 4 years in the Vendrake 91st. Private, same as I was when they pulled me out of the dye works on Vendrake and put a last gun in my hands. 4 years, no promotions, no commendations, no marks on my record, good or bad. I'm the kind of soldier that nobody writes reports about, which in the Imperial Guard is the best kind of soldier you can be. Because the moment someone writes your name on a piece of paper, something terrible is about to happen to you. I've seen it enough times to know that. You get noticed, you get used, you get used, you get used up. I have no interest in being used up. We're on Ceruthis. Have been for the better part of a year. It was a bad deployment at first. Secessionist rising, governor went rogue, took half the planetary defense force with him. Standard enough. It happens on 100 worlds.
Where would you go if you go like rogue? Like, where would you go? Like, do you turn traitor? Do you succumb to chaos? Like, what happens? Like, where would you go? Honestly.
A year across the Imperium, the kind of thing that the Munitorum files under minor pacification action and then sends 40,000 men to deal with.
Minor pacification.
We landed in the second wave, after the Mordant 6th had already taken the capital. Our job was to sweep the outer provinces, clear the holdout positions, burn whatever needed burning. We did that. Took us 5 months and cost us about a third of our strength, but we did that. The fighting's been over for 8 weeks now, officially. The secessionists are dead or captured or hiding so deep in the mine complexes that Command has decided they're someone else's problem. We sit in our forward base outside a town called Vosk, and we wait for the Navy to come and take us somewhere else.
It's gonna take some time.
That's what we're doing. Waiting. The Imperial Guard's real speciality. I want to tell you about yesterday. Not because anything extraordinary
It's like normal. Hurry up and wait.
happened, but because nothing did, and that's the point. A normal day, a day between battles. If you've never served, you probably think that means a good day. And you're not wrong exactly. You're just not right either.
Yeah.
I woke up at fourth bell. You always wake up at fourth bell
You
because
have
that's
to.
when the camp vox starts playing the morning devotional, which is a recording of some priest reading from the Lectitio Divinitatus at a volume designed to make sure the Emperor's word reaches every tent
Did
in the
you hear it?
compound. The recording
Revelay.
skips in 2 places. I know this because I've heard it every morning for 8 weeks. There's a skip in the middle of a passage about the Emperor's light shielding the faithful, and another one during the closing benediction where the priest's voice jumps an octave and comes back sounding like he's being strangled. Everyone in the tent knows both skips. Brennick, who sleeps on the cot next to mine, mouths the words in his sleep right through them. He doesn't wake up for the devotional anymore. None of us do, really. Your body just absorbs it after a while.
There we
like
go,
moisture through
Palomino-ish.
canvas.
White, gray, and orange.
I lay there for a minute, staring at the underside of the tent. It was a munitorum, standard field shelter, which meant it was made for 8 men, but held 12 because someone in logistics had decided that surviving a war didn't entitle you to enough space to roll over without elbowing your neighbor.
Yeah.
The canvas was that particular shade of gray-brown that the Imperium puts on everything, the color of a river after a flood. Back on Vendrake, at the dye works, we had a name for that color.
It's
We called
Palomino-ish,
it
right?
nothing weed. It was the shade you got when you mixed every leftover batch together at the end of a shift. All the failed colors and mismixed orders dumped into one vat.
Yeah.
You'd get this flat, lifeless brown that had no warmth and no character and no use for anything. The Munitorum must have ordered 10 billion square meters of nothing weed canvas because
Nothing
that's the
weed.
color of every tent, every cot cover, every kit bag and ration wrapper in the entire Imperial Guard. I've been looking at that color for 4 years. Some nights I dream in it. I got up. You learn to get up fast because there's no room to be slow about it. 12 men in a space for 8 means the morning routine is a choreography, and if you miss your step, someone catches a boot in the ribs. I had my kit rolled and
Wait, on
stowed before
purpose?
5th bell. Boots on, tunic
On purpose? Like, who gives them the boots in the rib? Did they give it to each other? Or does like Commissar comes in or an NCO comes
buttoned,
in?
webbing checked. You do it without thinking. Your fingers know the sequence better than your brain does. Button, clasp, strap, buckle, check, check, check. Done. Then you stand at the foot of your cot and you wait for the corporal to come through. Corporal Henniger came through at 5th bell exactly, like always. Henniger was one of those NCOs who ran on routine the way an engine runs on fuel. Same time every morning, same route through the tent rows, same expression on his face, which was the expression of a man who had been asked to count something unpleasant and was partway through. He wasn't cruel. That's worth saying.
He's
There
not
are
cruel.
cruel NCOs in the Guard, men who enjoy the
Always cruel
small
NCOs.
power they've been given and use it like a blade, and Henniger wasn't one of them. He was just efficient. He walked the line, checked kit, checked faces, made marks on his slate. If your kit was wrong, he'd tell you once. If it was wrong the next day, he'd put you on a detail. If it was wrong a 3rd time, he'd send you to the platoon sergeant, and nobody wanted to be sent to Platoon Sergeant Durlow, because Durlow solved problems permanently. I kept my kit right. It wasn't hard. It was just the same thing every day, done the same way, and I'd been doing it for 4 years. You don't forget how to breathe, and you don't forget how to stow your webbing.
Repetition, boys.
It's the same
Repetition.
muscle. Roll call was at the parade ground, which was a square of packed earth near the center of camp that someone had optimistically leveled with shovels and a stolen roller. We formed up by squads. 2nd Platoon, Garin Company. My squad was 8 men, which meant we were at full strength for once, which was unusual and therefore suspicious. In the Guard, anything good is suspicious because good things have a way of being the down payment on something awful. We'd been 8 for 3 weeks, ever since the replacements
So no
came up
one's
from the
dying.
depot at Vosk. Before the replacements, we'd been 5. Before the fighting in the Torod Valley,
There was 12?
we'd been 11.
Oh,
The
11.
numbers go up and down. You stop attaching significance to them after a while.
What is the standard infantry squad in the Imperium, you guys? Is it like 12? Because 4 is a fire team, 12 is squad. That's why you get like a divisible of like, you get like 4 fire teams and like a single squad. But here's the thing. But in the Astra Militarum, what's a squad? And of course, I'm assuming you have to depend on the army, but 4 is a fire team. It depends on the country. Sometimes it's 8. I've been in a squad of 8. But I've never actually seen a squad of 12 if you think about it. But standard is 12. Anyways, let's keep on going. Our team is 4.
They're just numbers. Henniger called the roll. Names, one by one, down the list. You hear your name, you say present.
Present.
And that's your proof of existence for another day. The Imperium wants to know that you're alive.
So they're like taken like prisoners. Roll call. I had to like change gloves for the simple reason that it keeps slipping. And this one's getting wet. So, Palomino horse. A bit fleshy, orangey to me, but you know what, meh? I'm pretty sure once we like wash it with flesh shade or something, once we wash it over with flesh shade, everything's gonna be fixed.
Not because it cares about you, but because you represent a resource that has been allocated and must be accounted for. You are a line on a logistics manifest. You are a mouth that consumes 0.3 rations per day. You are a body that occupies a set volume of transport space. You are a trigger finger attached to a las gun that costs the Munitorum more than your entire life's wages.
You are a resource,
They want
brother.
to know you're present because they want to know their investment is intact. That's roll call. That's what present means. Every name got an answer. Every name.
Every name has
That
to
was the
answer.
odd thing. For the first time in weeks, nobody had gone missing in the night. I say gone missing because that's the term we use. Not died or deserted or was taken. Gone missing. It covers everything and
MIA?
commits to nothing. 3 weeks ago, a man named Dren Vasic
I guess you can't be MIA if there was no action.
didn't answer his name at roll call. Cot was empty. Kit was gone. No sign of him. Henniger made a note. The platoon sergeant made a note. Somewhere up the chain, someone filed a report. That was it. Nobody talked about it after that. Nobody wondered, at least not out loud.
Why would
Vasic
they?
had been one of the old hands, 5 years in, a man who knew every trick for getting through a deployment alive, and then one morning his name just echoed off the parade ground and nobody answered it. Things like that
Why?
happen.
Oh.
You learn not to ask about them. Asking is a kind of noticing, and noticing is a kind of involvement, and involvement is the thing that gets your name on a piece of paper. After roll call, breakfast. The mess was a long tent near the eastern perimeter. It smelled the way guard mess tents always smell, that thick, damp, starchy fog that gets into your uniform and stays there. We queued. The guard is very good at queuing. We shuffled forward,
What
and
else are they-
eventually a
what else are they good
servitor
at?
with 3 mechanical arms and 1 organic one.
Dendrite arms. But anyways, here's the thing, right? So we've got this dude, and I don't know if like, did I paint this horse right? Honestly, don't know. Did I paint this horse right? I'm thinking Palomino, but Palomino. I honestly don't know. I painted this horse right. This is like one of the reasons why I've been so uninspired. Like I'm afraid to like screw it up. Anyways, keep on going.
That didn't seem to work properly ladled something into our mess kits.
Ah.
It was the brown stuff. I don't know what the brown stuff is, technically. There's probably a Munitorum designation for it, but to us it was just the brown stuff. It was warm.
You don't want to
and it was
find out,
thick,
soldier.
And it tasted like grain that had been boiled until it forgot it was ever alive, and then boiled some.
Oh, hey, Praj, what's up? And a darker aesthetic, like a dark red or a ginger-ish? I'm sorry, man. I wasn't looking at this. I wasn't looking at the chat. A darker aesthetic? Well, I'm actually planning to paint one of the horses as midnight black. Oh, and by the way, yeah, actually, you can actually call these things a sculpt, but this is actually a mini. I mean, as in 40K. What we're listening to is basically a miniature. What we're looking at right now is a miniature of A Song of Ice and Fire, and the story we're listening to is basically a story from the world of Warhammer 40K. So yeah, I'm planning to paint one of the horses in a darker aesthetic, and let's see if we can like finish that by tonight. All right. So yeah, the story you're listening to right now, Warhammer 40K aesthetic, like this where this guy came from, like where the Space Marine came from. It just like dawned on me, like regardless, like the whole thing's so popular right now and everything, but a lot of people like are still unaware of basically tabletop RPGs or miniature RPGs, especially those for example, I only started to get into TTRPGs or tabletop RPGs or wargaming 2024 or 2023. For the simple reason that I thought I had some time. I finally had some time and everything, so might as well get to it. I've always wanted to explore D&D, and now that I'm into it, now that I'm actually getting involved in that particular, oh, that's something. And now that see, here's the problem, right? The color actually changed. Like it's no longer orange. It's now it's like palomino, actual palomino. So yeah, it just like dawned on me, like unless you're into one particular community, unless you're actually actively looking or actively participating in one particular community, we can't blame you for not knowing or not being aware of the things or the events that are happening. Like for example, Warhammer 40K. Like for most guys, I when I actually invited some of my older friends, uh, if they wanted to play, and I asked them, "Have you ever heard of Warhammer 40K?" And they told me, "Oh yeah." And one told me, "Isn't that like the video game?" Of course, the thing is, he's not into video game. He's from my old crowd, so we mostly did sports, basketball in particular, and a little bit of judo and boxing. But the thing is, yeah, that's how I learned that you actually have to immerse yourself in a particular community if you're actually gonna be able to know or just things inside. Like for example, our man Praj here actually described this one as a sculpt, but it's a mini. But you know what? That only means that our man Praj here isn't part of the community, which is fine. You know what? It's our the worst thing we can do is to gatekeep these things because these things thrive the more a community grows. So yeah, what we have right now, my man, is what we call a mini. And you know what? If ever you've heard of card games like Magic the Gatherings, this is what you'd call basically a war game or a TTRPG or a tabletop RPG war game. So this one is from the universe of A Song of Ice and Fire. You know what? Here's the thing, right? This is why I'm so afraid. You can actually notice it right now. You can actually see it right now. Dark, light. Dark, light, color. And so Palomino, dark, Palomino, dark. It actually changed because of the mix. And I am honestly rushing right now. I'm actually going as fast as I can right now because the problem is if I lose this Palomino mix, this Palomino brown, at the bottom half of the horse right now, I am going to lose it forever. Like, I won't be able to, like, repeat it. So, yeah. I'm just gonna rush in. And yeah, I like the story.
More. It kept you going. That was its purpose. We sat on the ground outside the mess tent because there weren't enough benches. Brennick sat next to me, and Suven sat across from us, and Tolek sat a little way apart, because Tolek always sat a little way apart. That was our corner of the squad. The other four, the new ones from the replacement depot, sat together in their own cluster. They'd been with us 3 weeks, and they still hadn't mixed in, which was normal. It takes time.
Yeah.
You don't trust new faces in the Guard, not because you think they're going to betray you, but because you think they're going to die.
Yeah.
And it's easier if you don't know them too well when that happens.
Not know their names.
That sounds cold. It is cold. But it's also the thing that keeps you functional, and functional is all the Guard asks you to be. Brennick ate his brown stuff with the concentration of a man performing surgery. He always ate slowly, methodically, scraping every bit from the edges of his mess kit, making the meal last as long as possible. Not because he enjoyed it, but because eating was something to do, and doing something was better than doing nothing. Brennick had been with the regiment almost as long as I had. He was from a district on Vendrake called Sullen Reach, which was a coastal manufacturing zone that made industrial sealants. He never talked about it. He never talked about home at all, actually, which was either a sign of deep emotional discipline or a sign that Sullen Reach was so miserable that even the Guard was an improvement.
Or he just, like, didn't want to, like, miss home.
I never asked which one it was. You don't ask those kinds of questions. Suven was different. Suven talked. Suven always talked. She was from a district called Threp, on the other side of the continent from where I'd grown up. And she had opinions about everything, and she shared them freely and at volume. She'd been in the 91st for 3 years, and she'd already survived 2 deployments before Ceruthis, which made her either very lucky or very good. And I suspected it was both. She was the kind of soldier who always knew where the clean water was, who always had a spare charge pack when you needed one, who could trade a broken chrono for a full ration pack and make both parties think they'd gotten the better deal. Every squad has someone like Suven.
Scrounger.
If you're lucky, they're on your side. Screening today, Suven said, between mouthfuls. She said it the way you'd say rain today or drill today, just information delivered flat. But I noticed that she said it early, before anyone else had mentioned it, which meant she'd already heard something from someone who knew something, which was how Suven operated. She collected information the way other people collected debts. What kind of screening? Brennick asked, without looking up from his mess kit. Medical. Full workup. Every company, every platoon, every squad. They're running us all through the medici station before the end of the week. I didn't say anything. I ate my brown stuff, and I listened, and I thought about what medical screening meant on a world where we'd been fighting a chaos-aligned insurrection. It meant they were looking for something. It meant someone, somewhere up the command chain, was worried that what we'd fought might have left marks that didn't show on the outside. I'd heard about this kind of thing. Every guardsman has. The stories that circulate in the lower ranks about what happens after a chaos engagement, the checks, the tests, the men who go into the medici station walking and come out on stretchers, or don't come out at all. You hear the stories and you tell yourself they're exaggerated.
Always wondered if the whole silver bullet thing was a Marine Corps thing.
Because the alternative is too large to fit inside your head while you're also trying to eat breakfast and get through the day. When's our slot? I asked. Afternoon. 14th bell, maybe 15th. Garen Company's second in the rotation after Pellick. Company. Brennick finally looked up. His face had that careful blankness that experienced soldiers wear when they're calculating odds. Anything to
Odds of
worry
what?
about? Suven shrugged. It's the guard, Brennick. There's always something to worry about. One of the replacement soldiers, a square-jawed kid from the depot, whose name I thought was Merrick or Melik or something close to that, leaned over from his cluster. Medical screening? That's good, isn't it? Means they're actually looking after us for once. He said it with the particular brightness of a man who hadn't yet learned what the guard means when it says it's looking after you. The guard doesn't look after you. The guard maintains
It's a silver bullet.
you, the way you maintain a lasgun, the way you maintain a chimera. You're functional or you're not, and if you're not, you get repaired or you get replaced or you get repurposed. Looking after implies concern. The Imperium doesn't have concern. It has resource management. Nobody answered him.
Like the best way to
Silence
put
was
it.
answer enough, if he'd known how to read it. He didn't, because he was new, and new men don't speak silence yet. He went back to his brown stuff
men
and the
don't
conversation
speak
he'd been having with his fellow
silent
replacements, and the four of us, the old hands, the ones who'd been in the caves, sat in our quiet and ate our food and didn't look at each other. That was breakfast. That was how we started the day. Sitting on packed earth outside a tent, eating
Was it
food
too
that
bad to
tasted
just
like
look at
defeat.
each other?
Talking about a medical screening that might or might not be routine, on a world that might or might not still be dangerous, waiting for orders that might or might not come. A normal morning, nothing unusual, nothing worth reporting. And if I keep saying that, if I keep telling you how normal everything
It might
was,
just be true.
it's because that's how you survive. You make it normal. You take the strangeness and the dread and the low, constant hum of wrongness, and you fold it into the routine until it disappears. You tell yourself, this is just a day. This is just breakfast. This is just a screening. This is just the guard. And you keep going, because going is the only direction there is. After breakfast, the day splits into two halves. Morning is duty. Afternoon is either more duty or, if the Emperor smiles on you, something resembling free time. The morning rotation was posted on the assignment board outside the command pavilion, which was a sheet of plastic nailed to a post and covered in Henniger's tight, careful handwriting. Second Squad, 2nd Platoon, Garen Company, had been assigned perimeter maintenance, Section 4 through 7.
What does that mean?
That meant the eastern stretch of the camp's outer defenses, the razor wire and the firing trenches, and the little ferrocrete pillboxes that someone had built during the first week, and that nobody had maintained since because nobody expected to be here long enough for them to matter. That was 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
The pillboxes were crumbling already, the ferrocrete cracking in the Saruthi's heat, which was a heavy, wet kind of heat that settled on you like a damp blanket and didn't let go until nightfall. Vendrake was a cold world, a world of gray skies and factory smoke and rain that tasted like metal. Saruthis was the opposite of everything I knew, and my body still hadn't forgiven me for bringing it here. We drew tools from the engineering stores, shovels, wire cutters, a hand crank auger, rolls of replacement razor tape, a bucket of something called Ferrobond that was supposed to patch cracked ferrocrete, but mostly just made a mess.
Yeah.
The engineering stores were run by a quartermaster named Losh, who had lost his left arm at the elbow during the Torod Valley offensive, and now managed inventory with one hand and a permanently offended expression, as though the universe owed him something specific and...
A permanently offended expression? You know what? It's the guards. They want you. What else type of expression are you going to wear on your face?
Kept failing to deliver. Losh was a man who cared about tools the way some men care about women. He knew every shovel by the scratches on its handle. He could tell you the exact torque rating of every bolt in his inventory.
Torque
He
rating?
once made a trooper stand in the rain for 20 minutes because the man had returned a wire cutter with mud on the grip.
Ah.
Losh wasn't cruel either. He was just a man who had lost an arm and gained a supply depot, and the supply depot was all he had left, and he was going to make sure every item in it was treated with the respect that the Imperium had failed to show him.
Ah.
We walked out to Section 4 and got to work. Perimeter maintenance is one of those jobs that sounds important and feels pointless. You walk the wire, checking for breaks and gaps and sections where the posts have tilted. You clear vegetation that's grown up through the coils because the local plants on Saruthis were aggressive, thick-stemmed weeds with leaves the color of old blood that could push through razor wire in a matter of days. You patch the ferrocrete where it's cracked, and you shore up the sandbag walls where they've
There we go.
sagged,
Palomino.
and you clean the firing slits in the pillboxes where dust and insect debris have started to clog them. You do all of this knowing that if something actually attacked the camp, none of it would matter. The wire wouldn't stop anything bigger than a man. The pillboxes would crumble under sustained fire. The whole perimeter was a gesture, a line drawn in the dirt to make the camp feel like a place that had edges, because without edges, you're just men standing in a field. And that's a thought that makes officers nervous. Krennic worked the wire. I worked the pillbox at Section 5, scraping crud out of the firing slits with a flat tool that might once have been a chisel. Tolek filled sandbags. The new men from the replacement depot did whatever Henniger told them to, which was mostly digging and carrying and grunt labor that new men always get assigned
the horse is ginger.
because it doesn't require judgment and it keeps them busy. Suven, as usual, had managed to position herself on a task that involved minimal physical effort and maximum observation. She was checking the Auspex relay mounted on the pillbox roof, a piece of equipment she almost certainly didn't know how to repair, but which gave her an elevated vantage point and an excuse to look important while doing nothing strenuous. That was a Suven's speciality. I respected it. The morning was quiet. That's the word I keep coming back to. Quiet. And I know that sounds like a good thing, and it was, mostly. But quiet on Saruthis had a texture to it. Back home on Vendrake, quiet meant the machines had stopped, which usually meant something was broken, which usually meant someone was about to get hurt. Quiet was a warning. On Saruthis, the quiet was different. It was bigger. It was the quiet of a landscape that should have had things in it, and didn't. Before the war, Vosk and the surrounding farmland had been home to about 30,000 people. Imperial citizens, loyal or otherwise, living and working and dying in the ordinary way that people do. Now there was nobody. The fields around the camp were empty. The town behind us was empty. The roads were empty. We'd killed or displaced everyone in
Raj, after this one, we're gonna make a midnight black horse.
a 50-kilometer radius, and the land just sat there, like a room after all the furniture's been taken out. You could feel the absence. It pressed on you, the same way altitude does, a weight that you couldn't see but couldn't shake. I scraped the firing slit clean and thought about nothing, which is a skill you develop after enough time in the Guard. Not meditation, not focus, just the ability to let your mind go flat and gray, while your hands do what they've been trained to do. Your fingers find the rhythm, and your thoughts drain out like water, and you exist in this narrow space between one task and the next. And it's peaceful, in a way. Or at least it's painless. And painless is the best you can hope for on most days. Around 8th bell, Henniger came by on his round.
In other words, you learn how to disassociate. I mean, it's like when you're working out and then after a set, you just have to breathe and then blank your mind out or blank your eyes out. I honestly love that feeling.
He checked our work, made his marks, and then stood there for a moment, looking out past the wire at the empty fields. I watched him from the pillbox. Henniger was not a man who stood still without reason. He was a man who moved, who checked, who marked, who moved again. Stillness in Henniger was like quiet on Ceruthis. It meant something.
Was a wait.
Court, he said, without turning around. Corporal, you served at Torod Valley. Yes, Corporal. The caves. You went into the caves. I stopped scraping. The tool was suddenly very cold in my hand, or maybe my hand was suddenly very warm.
Yeah.
Yes, Corporal. Third day of the assault, my squad was part of the sweep team. He nodded, still looking at the fields. The screening this afternoon. You know what it is? It wasn't a question, so I didn't answer it like one.
They're looking
I
for
just
heresy.
waited. You were in proximity to confirmed arch-enemy materiel in those caves. Texts, symbols, objects. The Medici staff will want to know about that. They'll ask you questions. Answer them clearly and don't volunteer anything extra. Don't elaborate. Don't explain. Don't try to demonstrate how unaffected you are. Just answer the question and move to the next one. He turned to look at me then, and his face was the same as it always was, the expression of a man counting something unpleasant. But his eyes were doing something different. His eyes were giving me a warning. Understood? Understood, Corporal.
He's a good NCO then.
He moved on. He checked Tolek's sandbags, made a mark, kept walking. That was it. A 30-second conversation that meant nothing on the surface and everything underneath. Henniger had just told me to be careful. Henniger, who never told anyone anything that wasn't on the duty roster. Henniger, who managed his platoon the way Losh managed his tools, with precision and distance and no personal attachment whatsoever. He hadn't been in the caves with us. The sweep team had been drawn from 2nd Squad and an attached element from Regimental Scouts, and Henniger had stayed behind with the platoon HQ. But he'd read the report. He'd signed the after-action paperwork. He knew what we'd put in it, and he knew what wasn't in it, and he'd evidently seen enough other men come back from things like that to recognize what was coming. That man had just gone out of his way to warn me. And the fact that he felt the need to do that was more frightening than anything he could have said. The caves at Torrid Valley. I hadn't thought about them in weeks, which was deliberate, which was a choice I'd made the same way you choose not to touch a hot surface. We'd gone in on the 3rd day of the Valley Assault, a 12-man sweep team clearing tunnel networks that the secessionists had used as command bunkers. The intelligence briefing had said to expect light resistance. The intelligence briefing had been wrong, but not in the way we'd expected. There was no resistance at all. The caves were empty. The secessionists were gone, pulled out days before we arrived. But they'd left things behind. Not weapons, not supplies, not anything useful or practical or military. They'd left other things. Markings on the walls, cut deep into the stone with something that wasn't a tool. Arrangements of objects that I didn't recognize and didn't want to. A smell that wasn't rot and wasn't chemical and wasn't anything I had a name for. A smell like a color that shouldn't exist, if that makes any sense at all. We were in those caves for 4 hours. We reported what we found. The commissariat sealed the entrance the next morning with melta charges, and that was supposed to be the end of it. Nobody talked about it. Nobody was told to not talk about it, which was itself a kind of instruction. When the Imperium doesn't tell you to be quiet, that's when you should be quietest of all. And now, 8 weeks later, someone had remembered that we'd been in those caves, and someone had decided that warranted a screening, and Henniger had decided that I needed to know to be careful. I went back to scraping the firing slit. I thought about nothing. My hands did what they were trained to do. But the nothing I was thinking about had a shape now, and the shape was the caves, and I couldn't make it go flat and gray, no matter how hard I tried. At some point, I'm not sure how long after Henniger left, I looked down and realized that my hand had stopped scraping. The tool was pressed against the inside wall of the pillbox, and it had moved. Not in the cleaning motion, not the back and forth that I'd been doing for the last hour. It had moved differently. I'd been pressing the edge of the chisel into the ferrocrete and dragging it the way you'd drag a stylus across a slate, and there was a mark.
Now here's the first problem, right? I made a mistake. And now, I have to make sure that I redo the colors. Hold on. Can you guys actually see? There we go. I made a mistake. Nope, you guys can't see it. The whole thing actually went darker. Made a line across a hair right there. So now I have to actually come up with this particular color, with a combination of this particular color of the horse. Which isn't really bad if I look at it. But anyways. So I have to basically, cover it up.
A line, curved, deliberate, about the length of my thumb, cut into the gray surface, with enough pressure to leave a shallow groove. My forearm ached from the work, the kind of ache you get from sustained effort.
He's afraid.
And I didn't remember the effort. I didn't remember leaning into the tool. I didn't remember the strain.
That's fear. He's afraid. That's why I love these stories.
The mark was there, and my arm knew it had made it, but my mind had no record of the making. I looked at it. It was nothing. A scratch, an idle mark, the kind your hand makes when your attention drifts. People do it all the time. Scratch lines in tables, trace shapes on foggy glass. It didn't mean anything. It was just a curve. But it was the same curve. The first stroke of the first marking on the left wall of tunnel complex Theta 7, the entry line that led into the larger pattern, the beginning of whatever those shapes had been trying to spell. I knew it the way I knew the weight of my last gun, the way I knew the sequence of my morning kit check. I knew it because it was in me, carved into the same place where muscle memory lives, sitting next to button, clasp, strap, buckle, and strip, clean, reassemble.
That's dangerous.
It was there, in my hands, and my hands had written it without asking my permission. I scraped it out, ground the chisel across.
That's dangerous, though. What he's doing right now, it could be something of, it could be chaos. And you know what? I mean, here's the thing, right? As bureaucratic or as red tape as it may sound, the guard actually knows what it's doing, and there's a reason why something must have happened why they're calling for like a check. And yeah, if he started, if he's subconsciously doing strange marks on the wall, it could be a sign of chaos. A taint of chaos. Taint.
The mark until it was just a smear of gray dust on gray wall. I checked to make sure nobody had seen.
There we go.
Nobody had. Brennick was at the wire, 30 meters away. Tolek was behind the next pillbox. The new men were digging. Nobody saw. Nobody would know. It was just a scratch, just an idle mark. My hands were shaking. Not much, not enough to notice at a distance. But I noticed. I noticed because my hands hadn't shaken in years. Not since Khalast, not since the first time I'd killed someone. 4 years of training and combat and routine had made my hands into instruments as reliable as the last gun they held. And now they were shaking, because they'd done something I hadn't told them to do. And the thing they'd done was a word from a language that I shouldn't know.
Dangerous.
We finished the perimeter work by 10th bell. Henniger inspected, signed off, released us for the midday meal. We walked back through camp, and as we walked, I noticed things. I noticed because once you start noticing, you can't stop. Even when you want to, even when stopping would be better for you. I noticed the Mediki station. It was bigger than it had been yesterday. Someone had added 2 more tent sections overnight, extending the structure westward,
That's
creating
bad.
new rooms or bays or whatever they're called in medical terminology. The extra canvas was clean and pale, not yet stained by the ceruthus dust, which meant it was fresh from stores, which meant someone had requisitioned it recently, which meant the screening was bigger than a routine checkup. Routine checkups don't need extra space. Routine checkups use the existing Medici station, the same 3 beds and
Something happened, and now they're trying to look for the taint of chaos. Mhm. All right, so broad strokes is done. No. Actually, not yet done. We just have to like look at the other stuff. Broad stroke is almost done. You can see lots of mistakes. I'm literally hitting the bow, but it's fine. It's gonna be the last things we're actually going to paint.
one overworked medic that had been patching us together since we landed. This was something else. I noticed the men standing outside the Medici station. Not patients, guards. 2 of them in full kit, las guns across their chests.
That's
They
bad.
weren't from our regiment. Their uniforms were a darker shade of that same nothing weed brown, almost black, and they had a unit patch I didn't recognize. Not Vendrake 91st, not Morden 6th, something else. Something that had arrived in camp without announcement, which is something that doesn't happen unless someone important wants it to happen quietly. I noticed the smell. Not the mess tent smell, not the latrine smell, not the hot canvas and sweat smell of a guard camp in summer. Something sharper, cleaner, medical. The kind of smell that comes from things being
Antiseptic.
sterilized. It was
There we
faint,
go.
carried on the air in thin threads, and most people probably didn't catch it at all. But I'd spent 3 years working in a dye works, mixing chemicals in vats, learning to identify compounds by their smell before they could burn your skin off.
Sterilization.
My nose was trained for things that other people's noses weren't. And what I smelled under the camp smells and the ceruthus air and the ever-present dust was antiseptic.
There we go.
A lot of it. Enough to clean something much larger than 3 beds and 1 medic's workstation. I noticed all of this and I said nothing. I walked to the mess tent with my squad and I ate my midday ration, which was a block of compressed protein, the color and consistency of old plaster, and I drank my recaf, which was hot and bitter and tasted like someone had strained engine coolant through a sock. And I thought about Henniger's warning and the extra tents and the guards in their dark uniforms, and I told myself that it was all normal, that this was just a screening.
Is it?
That the Imperium screens its soldiers after chaos engagements as a matter of standard procedure. That everything was fine. I'm very good at telling myself that everything is fine. 4 years of practice. After the midday meal, we had 2 hours of personal maintenance time. That meant doing whatever you needed to do to keep yourself and your equipment functional. Wash your uniform if you could find water. Clean your weapon if it needed cleaning. Patch your boots if they were coming apart, which on Ceruthus they always were, because the local soil had something corrosive in it that ate through boot leather like acid through paper. Or you could sleep if you could manage it, which most people couldn't in the middle of the day, because the heat turned the tents into ovens, and you'd lie there sweating into your cot until the canvas was soaked through and you'd achieved nothing except dehydration. I cleaned my las gun. I always cleaned my las gun during personal maintenance, because it was a task I could do without thinking, and it gave me something to focus my hands on while my mind dealt with whatever it needed to deal with. My last gun was a Cantrell Pattern Mark IV, standard issue for Vendrake regiments, a weapon so common and unremarkable that it didn't even have a popular nickname among the troops. Some regiments named their weapons. We didn't. You don't name a tool. You maintain it, you use it, and when it breaks, you get another one.
Interesting.
I had cleaned this particular weapon roughly 800 times over the last 4 years. I could strip and reassemble it blindfolded.
Alright, so what's gonna happen next? I'm sorry, while he's next, is that we're gonna do the fittings and we're gonna do the horse fittings because here's the thing, right? This brownish palomino color, I'm not really sure how to recreate it. So what I'm going to do is that I'm gonna have to work fast on the bridle. I'm gonna have to work fast on the bridle and bridle the fittings and the saddle. Work as fast as I can so that way we could get it over with. So if I make any mistakes, I still have the paint that I use to basically color this particular horse. Anyways, let's go.
My fingers knew the weapon the way they used to know the dye vats on Vendrake, by shape and weight and temperature, by the way each part slotted against the next, by the small sounds it made when everything was seated properly. Cleaning a lost gun is the closest thing to prayer that I practice. Henniger would disapprove of me saying that.
Yeah.
The commissariat would definitely disapprove.
Smaller
But
brush?
it's true. Brennick sat on his cot and wrote a letter. He did this every 3 or 4 days, producing a single sheet of thin paper.
Do the letters actually arrive? I mean, does the world he's writing to still exist? I mean, that's the whole thing. That, for me, the stories of 40K has been so convoluted, like, it's so grimdark that you don't know what's happening beyond it. Like, you don't know. Like, there's no guarantee that there's no hope. Like, what's the point? Might as well take that last gun into your mouth, right? Whereas if you took fantasy, it all exists in like a single planet and like a single continent. So everyone's like right there. You know that north, south, east, and west still exist. Whereas here, you're just writing to what? To air. And what's the point of writing if you know for a fact that, it might never actually make it? The letter might not actually make it to its destination. And why are you writing? How come, with all this tech, they don't have a phone? Well, at least, not for normal soldiers.
Covered in his slow, careful handwriting, folding it into a standard Munitorum envelope, sealing it with his thumbprint and adding it to the outgoing mail pile at the command pavilion. He never told me who he was writing to. I never asked. The mail pile at the command pavilion was a wooden crate near the adjutant's desk, and it was always full because men wrote letters faster than the logistical chain could move them. Some of those letters had been in that crate for weeks. Some of them would never leave. The Navy transport that was supposed to come for us would carry the mail when it carried us. And until then, every letter in that crate was just words on paper, going nowhere, saying things to people who might be dead or displaced or so far away that the letter would take years to reach them and arrive as a relic from a past that no longer existed. But men wrote them anyway. They sat on their cots and they chose their words, and they sealed their envelopes, and they carried them to the pile, and the act of writing was the point, not the delivery. It was a way of believing that somewhere on some world, in some hab block or workshop or kitchen, there was a person who knew your name and cared whether you were alive. Whether or not that was true didn't matter.
Probably not.
The writing was enough. I had stopped writing letters after our first deployment.
Hold on, you guys. For this particular color,
not because I didn't have anyone to write.
I have to get like a needle downstairs. Hold on, will be a bit of a break, right? I just have to get the needle downstairs in order to, get this one properly, because as much as I squeeze it out, it means that a part of this thing is dried out already. Hold on. Alright, we're back. There we go. Alright, so how you fix something like this? This is cheap paint. Hold on. This is cheap paint. So the problem is it's prone to blocking. It's prone to drying up. So the problem is it's so cheap. What would be the point, right? Like, you know, it wouldn't matter anyway because it's so cheap. Just buy another bottle. You know, if the whole thing dries up. The problem is it's like in the middle of the night right now, so what would be the point? So what I do is I do this. See? Let's paint. And then let's see if this toothpick will fit. Will it fit? Nope. It won't fit, but for some reason, this one from like a glue cap actually fits. And there we go. There's the clog. There's the clog. And there's the clog. Gone. And fix. It's done. So, one of the reasons why we had to, like, you know, go and do that is because, check this out, right? The horse is already palomino. And I don't think that the leather color is popping out enough. So we're gonna have to darken our leather. That's it. We're gonna have to darken our leather. There we go. Hopefully it works. Because like I'm just like winging this. I'm not, you know, I'm just trying to basically troubleshoot my way out of this mess. Like, I'm not, you know, doing anything. Like, if I screw this up, I'm gonna have to recreate this color again. Which I'm not sure if I can. That's my problem. That's why, you know, I've been afraid to actually get on with this project. So, yeah, let's keep on going.
I had a mother and 2 brothers on Vendrake, or at least I'd had them when I left. I stopped because I didn't know what to say. What do you write to your mother from a war? Dear mother, I am still alive. The food is bad. Yesterday I killed 3 men. They were human beings, Imperial citizens, who'd chosen the wrong side, and I killed them because someone told me to, and I was too tired to think about whether that was right. The weather is hot. I hope you are well. You can't send that, and I couldn't send anything else, because anything else would be a lie, and I had enough lies in my life without adding more to the pile. So I stopped. The last letter I sent was from Galast, 3 years ago. I don't know if it arrived. I don't know if my mother is alive to have received it.
There we go.
Vendrake
See,
is
what
a
would be the
long way
point?
from here, and 3 years is a long time, and the galaxy is full of things that kill people who have nothing to do with wars. Brennick's pen stopped. He looked up, head tilted, the way a man looks when he's heard someone call his name from another room. Did you say something?
No.
I hadn't said anything. I'd been cleaning in silence for the last 10 minutes. No. He frowned. Not the nervous jaw test. Something different. Concentration. As if he was trying to hear a sound that was just below the threshold of hearing.
I like my red.
A frequency that the ear...
I like my leather a bit red. So, what we're doing is that we are going with a bit of mahogany. Mahogany brown. I've been trying to like save it for like the bow and arrow, but I'm just gonna try and use quark brown for the bow and arrow. Yeah.
Could almost catch, but not quite. He stayed like that for 3 or 4 seconds, head tilted, pen suspended over the letter, ink pooling at the nib in a small dark dot that spread slowly into the paper. Then he shook his head, went back to writing, and the moment was gone. But the dot stayed, A dark blot in the middle of his careful handwriting, a stain where the words had been interrupted by something neither of us could name. I thought about that while I
Wait.
cleaned my...
He's hearing things and he's drawing patterns. That sounds bad, boys. That sounds like chaos to me. Sounds like the taint of chaos. It's bad. This is grimdark. There are no happy endings.
last gun, about Vendrake, about the dye works, about the particular smell of the chemicals we used to fix the colors into cloth, a sharp mineral tang that got into your hair and your skin and stayed with you for hours after your shift ended. I used to hate that smell. I'd scrub myself raw in the washroom trying to get rid of it. Now I'd give anything to smell it again. Not because I missed the work, which was hard and poorly paid and slowly poisoning everyone who did it, but because that smell meant I was somewhere specific. I was Pellincourt from Block 18, District Vanok, Vendrake. I was a man with an address and a mother and a job and a place in the world that was mine.
Here he's a serial
Out here,
number.
I was a number, a line on a manifest, a body that said present every morning and hadn't yet failed to. Tolek came back from somewhere. He'd been gone since we returned from perimeter duty, which wasn't unusual. Tolek went places. He was the quietest man in the squad, a thin, dark-featured man from a district on Vendrake that he never talked about. He spoke maybe 10 words a day, always relevant, never wasted. He did his duties, he maintained his kit,
Good man.
and in between he disappeared. Not literally. He'd just be somewhere else in the camp, doing something he never explained and nobody asked about, because Tolek had a quality that discouraged questions. It wasn't menace. It was more like depth. You looked at Tolek and you got the feeling that there was a lot more of him under the surface, and that the surface was there for your protection, not his. He sat on his cot and started disassembling his sidearm, a stub pistol that he'd acquired somewhere and that wasn't strictly regulation, but that Henniger pretended not to notice because Tolek was the best shot in the platoon by a margin that made the rest of us look like we were firing blind. His hands moved quickly, precisely, with practiced speed that comes from doing something thousands of times. Once, midway through, he stopped. The recoil spring was in his hand, and he was looking at it the way you look at a word that suddenly seems wrong, the letters in the right order but the meaning gone. 2 seconds. 3. Then his fingers remembered, and the disassembly continued, and his face showed nothing about the pause. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at anyone. But after a few minutes...
Here's the thing, right? We're going for a very bad ending, right? Our narrator is doing patterns. His squad mates writing letters or hearing things. And then the best shot in the squad is forgetting how to disassemble and assemble his weapon. That's bad. Because right now, if you tell me to get my weapon and to assemble and disassemble it, I could probably still do it. Well, I can't, do it in like under 30 seconds like I used to, but I could probably do it still with my eyes closed. And that was what? That was like more than 15... Yeah, more than 15 years ago. So yeah, there's something wrong here. Like, he forget how to disassemble his weapon? Now there's something wrong.
He spoke. 3rd Company went through the screening this morning. I looked up from my last gun. Tolek volunteering information was unusual enough to warrant attention. And 18 went in, 14 came out. The silence that followed was the kind that has weight, not dramatic silence, not shocked silence, the practical silence of men doing arithmetic that they don't want to do. 18 in, 14 out, 4 men gone, 1 in 4, give or take. And that was 3rd Company. who had seen less action in the Torod Valley than we had. Third Company hadn't gone into the caves. "Where did the four go?" Brennick asked. His pen stopped halfway through a word. Tolek shrugged, one shoulder barely a
Emperor
movement.
knows.
Medici Station. They didn't come back to their tents. Medici could mean a lot of things. Treatment, observation, quarantine, transfer. Things that didn't have clean words attached to them. Things that happened in the spaces between official records. 4 men from Third Company had walked into the Medici Station for a routine screening and hadn't walked out, and nobody was going to tell us why, and we were going to walk into the same station in a few hours and answer questions about caves that we'd been trying.
And that's the problem. One is hearing voices, one is drawing patterns, and the other is forgetting how to assemble and disassemble his weapon. It doesn't look good, boys.
Trying to forget. That was the situation. And you couldn't say it out loud because saying it made it real, and real things have to be dealt with, and we didn't have the tools or the authority or the information to deal with this. All we had was the ability to walk in when they called our names and trust that the Imperium, which had never given us any particular reason to trust it, would decide that we were still useful enough to keep. Suven appeared in the tent entrance, leaning against the frame with that casual posture she used when she had something important to say, and wanted to make it look unimportant. "Heard a rumor," she said. "You always hear rumors," Brennick said. "This one's from Pellic Company's senior medic. She says the screening isn't regular Medici, it's divisional. They brought specialists from the divisional headquarters at Ostfor. That's a 3-day transport. They planned this weeks ago. Divisional. That word sat in the air like a thrown stone. Divisional level anything meant resources that didn't come from our regimental chain. It meant someone far above our colonel had decided the situation on Saruthis required specialists. The kind of people who dealt with things that ordinary Medici
The kind that has the word Inquisition tailed to it.
staff weren't trained for or weren't authorized for. The kind of people who had clearance to make decisions about soldiers that regimental commanders weren't allowed to make. I finished reassembling my last gun. I checked the charge pack. Full. I checked the focusing array. Clean. I set the weapon on my cot and looked at my hands. They were steady. That surprised me. 4 years ago, my hands would have been shaking. But 4 years ago, I'd been a dye worker from Block 18 who didn't know what a chaos cultist was. Now I was a man who'd walked through caves marked with symbols that moved when you weren't looking directly at them, and my hands were steady, and I couldn't decide if that was a good sign or a bad one.
Probably
12th
a bad
bell.
one.
The camp shifted into its afternoon rhythm, which was slower and heavier than the morning. The heat was at its peak, and most of the regiment had retreated into whatever shade they could find. The camp generators hummed in the background, powering the Vox relays and the perimeter auspex, and the officers' quarters where, presumably, someone was making decisions about our futures that we would learn about only when those decisions had already been made. The servitors continued their work because servitors don't feel heat, don't feel anything. They moved through the camp on their assigned routes, carrying, lifting, cleaning, maintaining, their augmetic limbs clicking and whirring in the dead air. I tried not to look at them. Everyone tries not to look at them. Not because they're disturbing, although they are, but because they're a reminder.
Of what
They're
will
what
happen.
happens when the Imperium decides you're more useful as a machine than as a man. The right form filed by the right officer on the right day, and you're not Pelincourt anymore. You're a body that does what it's told without complaint, because the part of it that could complain has been cut away. I thought about Dren Vassic, the man who hadn't answered his name 3 weeks ago. I thought about his empty cot and his missing kit, and the note that Henniger had made,
Maybe he was
and
the
the
smart
report
one.
that someone had filed. and I thought about the servitor I'd seen 2 days ago. It had been working the waste detail near the southern latrine, a bulk loader model with 2 augmetic arms and a body that had been stripped of everything that made it recognizable as a former human. Standard conversion, standard programming, standard route. Except that when it had passed our tent section, it had stopped. Just stopped mid-stride for maybe 3 seconds. Servitors don't stop. Their programming is continuous, a loop of tasks and routes that repeats without interruption until the machine breaks or the task changes. They don't pause. They don't hesitate. They have nothing to hesitate about, because the part of them that could hesitate has been removed. But this one had stopped, facing our tent row, its optical sensors pointed at the canvas flap where second squad slept. 3 seconds. Then it had resumed its route, clicking along to the next waste point, and I told myself it was a malfunction, a processing glitch, a momentary error in its motor functions. And maybe it was. Servitors malfunction, systems degrade, components fail. There was no reason to connect a stopping servitor.
It's like you could always tell that they're just, doing everything. They're just, telling themselves that everything is going to be alright. Hold on. I have to just change the water because this is what it looks like now. Here's the thing, right? I know there are like, commission painters out there that would, put these things in their mouth, but don't do it. Because here's the thing, right? They're just, it's so sad. It's so, like, pathetic. Because here's the thing. We're painting minis, alright? This is literally nerd stuff. And some of these nerds are basically poisoning themselves by trying to put these things in their mouth instead of putting it in water as they should. Why? Because they're trying to look cool. But the thing is, guys, come on. Alright? This is a nerd. That's why you see a lot of them. You can tell for a lot of them, lift. But the thing is, this is like a nerd hobby, alright? You're not gonna grow cauliflower ears. So, guess what? Poisoning yourself by actually putting these things in your mouth, not gonna happen. Historically speaking, the reason why people put these things or, use their mouths to clean their brushes is because there was no indoor plumbing. But now, literally, all I have to do is walk to the bathroom like this. Hold on. No. See, like, putting this thing in your mouth. See, clean, done, over. Like, putting this thing in your mouth or drinking that liquid doesn't make you look cool. It just makes you look stupid. No. Hopefully I can like recreate the color because I am making a lot of mistakes. You're not gonna grow cauliflower ears, so just embrace it. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Ba ba ba.
To a missing man. No reason except the feeling I'd had when it paused. The feeling that something behind those dead optical lenses was looking for something it remembered, reaching through layers of programming and surgery.
Oh my god, is that like his family member turned into a servitor? That would be bad.
And lobotomization for a connection that had been severed but not entirely destroyed. I told myself it was a malfunction.
It's like that depressing porn story. Like, where the person behind the glory hole says, "Dad, is that you?" It could be that kind of story. This is Warhammer after all.
I believed it in the same way that I believed everything was fine, and the screening was
It's gonna be
routine,
fine.
and the 4 men from third company were just
You can literally tell that they're just telling themselves that everything was gonna be fine.
receiving additional medical attention. I believed it because the alternative was a door that I couldn't afford to open. The Imperium
afraid
doesn't
to
ship
open.
its converted dead off-world if it doesn't have to. Forward bases recycle their own resources, the way a ration kitchen recycles its scraps, and a body that walks out of a medici station as something other than a man is just another resource on the duty roster. Once you open that kind of door, you see what's on the other side, and you can't unsee it. And then you're a man who knows something, and men who know things in the Imperial Guard tend to stop being men and start being problems. And problems get solved.
Yeah.
13th bell, then 14th. The camp vox crackled with the afternoon's orders, delivered in the flat, nasal voice of Adjutant Prelin, who sounded like a man reading his own obituary and finding it dull. Garen Company, 2nd Platoon, was to
It's always those descriptions, man. So I love listening to these things.
report to the medici station at 15th bell for medical screening. Full kit. Identification chits ready for inspection. Any soldier failing to report would be placed on disciplinary charge and referred to the commissariat for review. That last part was new. You don't threaten commissariat referral for missing a medical appointment unless the medical appointment is something more than medical. We formed up at the designated area outside the medici station, which was a roped-off section of bare ground with a single field table where a clerk was checking names against a list. The clerk was not one of ours. He wore the same dark uniform as the guards I'd noticed that morning, and he had the manner of a man who was used to being feared and didn't feel the need to earn it. He checked my chit, compared it to his list, made a mark, and pointed me toward the entrance without a word. I went where he pointed. The entire process was designed to make you feel like cargo, and it achieved that purpose with precision. Inside, the medici station was unrecognizable. What had been a simple field hospital, 3 cots, a surgery table, a cabinet of supplies, was now a compartmentalized facility divided by hanging sheets of heavy canvas into separate sections. The original medici staff were nowhere in sight. Instead, the station was staffed by people in uniforms I'd never seen up close, dark fabric with silver insignia, and they moved with the unhurried confidence of people who had absolute authority and knew it. Some of them were clearly medical. They had the instruments and the manner. Others were less easy to categorize. They had data slates and augmetic recording devices and the kind of eyes that measure you, not your symptoms. I was directed to a waiting area, which was a section of floor with a bench. Brennick was already there. Suven was not. She'd been called through to one of the interior sections earlier in the rotation, and she hadn't come back yet. I sat down next to Brennick and waited. Waiting is the guard's real speciality. I've said that already. I'll say it again because it's the truest thing I know. Brennick was doing that thing with his jaw that he did when he was nervous. Not clenching exactly. More like testing, as if he was checking that his teeth were still in the right places. He didn't look at me. Suven's been in there for 30 minutes, he said, his voice low and level and stripped of everything that might indicate how he felt about that fact. Might just be thorough. Might be. He tested his jaw again. Tolek said 4 from 3rd Company didn't come out. I know. We were in the caves, Court. 3rd Company wasn't. If they lost 4, what do you think happens to us? I didn't answer that because there was no answer that would make either of us feel better, and because speaking the fear out loud is a way of feeding it, and I needed it small. I needed it manageable. I needed it to be a thought I could fold up and tuck away, the same way I folded my kit every morning, the same way I'd folded every terrible thing I'd seen over the last 4 years into a shape that fit inside the routine. My name was called. A woman in the dark uniform appeared at the edge of the waiting area and said, "Court, Pellin, Private Vendrake 91st," in a voice that was perfectly neutral, the way a servitor's voice is neutral, the way a machine reads data.
Never a good
I
sign.
stood, I walked. I followed her through a canvas partition into a small, square space lit by a single lumen strip that hummed faintly, a sound like a sleeping insect. There was a chair, a table, and a man sitting behind the table. The man was thin. That's the first thing I noticed because, in the Guard, everyone is either underfed thin or labor thick, and this man was neither. He was the kind of thin that comes from refinement, from a life spent in spaces where food is chosen, not allocated. His uniform was the same dark fabric.
Food is chosen, not allocated. God damn it. Who wrote these things? Probably AI, but you can't deny something like that. Anyways, let's keep on going.
As the others, but his had additional markings, small symbols embroidered on the collar that I didn't recognize. His hands were folded on the table in front of him, and they were clean, extraordinarily clean, the nails trimmed to perfect arcs, the skin unmarked by labor or combat or anything at all. Those hands had never held a last gun. Those hands had never been dirty. Those hands belonged to someone who operated in a part of the Imperium so removed from the mud and the blood and the brown stuff that it might as well have been a different civilization. "Sit down, Private." I sat. The chair was metal, cold through my trousers. The man looked at me with eyes that were the color of wet slate, and he didn't blink for what felt like a very long time. "You are Pellin Court, 4 years service, Vendrake 91st, Garin Company, 2nd Platoon, 2nd Squad."
Yes, sir.
"Yes, sir." "You were part of a 12-man sweep team that entered Tunnel Complex Theta 7 in the Torod Valley on the 3rd day of the Valley Offensive, Operational Day 141 of this deployment."
Yes, sir.
"Yes, sir." "You were inside the tunnel complex for approximately 4 hours and 11 minutes. I didn't know it had been 4 hours and 11 minutes. I didn't know anyone had been timing us. The fact that someone had been tracking our presence in those caves to the minute was, in its own quiet way, the most disturbing thing I'd heard all day. If you say so, sir. I do say so. It was recorded. He looked at his data slate. "During your time in the tunnel complex, you and your team encountered a number of objects and markings that were subsequently classified as arch-enemy artifacts. You were debriefed by your platoon commander at the time, Lieutenant Gent, and the tunnel complex was sealed the following day. Your debrief report states that you observed wall markings of an unknown nature, several objects arranged on a stone surface, and an unidentified atmospheric anomaly. Is that accurate?" "Yes, sir."
Yes, sir.
"Have you experienced any of the following since the Torrid Valley operation? Persistent headaches, visual disturbances, auditory phenomena not attributable to external sources, intrusive thoughts of a repetitive or obsessive nature, changes in
Obsessive
appetite
nature. Repetitive and obsessive nature. Making those marks on the wall. No, sir.
sleep patterns, feelings of being watched or observed, an urge to return to the tunnel complex, dreams or nightmares of a recurring nature involving specific images or symbols, difficulty distinguishing between waking experience and dream states, or any sensation that could be described as a presence, awareness, or voice that you cannot account for."
No, sir.
He said this as a single sentence, without pausing, without inflection, the way you'd read a list of inventory items. I listened and I felt something cold move through me. Not fear exactly, but the shape that fear would take if you compressed it into a single point. Because some of those things on his list were things I'd experienced. Not all of them. Not the
But some.
voices, not the urge to return. But the dreams, yes. Everyone who went into those caves had dreams. Brennick had them. We never talked about them, the same way we never talked about the caves, but I knew he had them because I could hear him in the night, shifting on his cot, muttering words that weren't quite words. And I had them too. Not every night, but sometimes when the Saruthis heat broke and I fell into deep, heavy sleep, I would dream about the cave walls, about the markings, about the way they seemed to shift when I looked at them from the corner of my eye,
About the
rearranging
pattern.
themselves into patterns that were always just on the edge of comprehension.
Hold up. There was this one YouTube painter, and he said like you're supposed to get the shaker machine. I already had it shake, or I already agitated this thing before we started, but he said, this practice of shaking your paint is really bad. Because he had to get surgery on his shoulder for it. But here's the thing, right? He's a professional painter, so I mean, if he's gonna do this for um for 1,000 times a day or something bad is gonna happen. Dun dun dun. Dun dun dun.
Like a word in a language you used to speak but have forgotten. But I remembered what Henniger had said. Answer clearly. Don't volunteer anything extra. Don't elaborate. Don't explain. Don't try to demonstrate how unaffected you are. Just answer the question and move to the next one. And I remembered the pillbox, the chisel in my hand, the curve in the ferrocrete that my fingers had drawn without permission. I remembered scraping it out and checking that nobody had seen and telling myself it was nothing.
No, sir.
I remembered that it wasn't nothing. No, sir, I said. None of those. The man looked at me. Those slate-colored eyes moved across my face the way a medice's hands move across a wound, probing, searching, looking for the place where the damage is. I kept my face still. I kept my hands still. I kept everything still, because stillness was the only armor I had. You're certain?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. He made a note on his data slate. The gesture was small, precise, the tip of a stylus touching a surface for half a second. But I watched his hand, and I noticed the direction the stylus moved, and even upside down I could see that he wasn't writing clear, or pass, or any of the comforting words you'd expect from a medical assessment. He was writing something longer, something with multiple characters. And then he looked up at me again, and his expression hadn't changed at all. And he said, "Remove your tunic and extend both arms." I did. The air was cool on my skin, which was covered in the usual collection of scars and marks that any guardsman accumulates over 4 years. Training injuries, combat injuries, the small everyday damage of a life spent handling rough equipment in harsh conditions. He looked at my arms, my chest, my back. He looked at my skin the way I used to look at dyed fabric on the quality inspection line at the works, checking for irregularities, for spots where the color hadn't taken, for flaws in the weave. He used a handheld device, something like a medici scanner but smaller and more refined, passing it over my torso, pausing at certain points, moving on. The device made no sound that I could hear, but I could feel it, a faint vibration against my skin, like being touched by something that wasn't there. "Dress," he said. Then, "You may experience some minor discomfort over the next 48 hours. Headaches, possibly fatigue. This is a normal response to the scanning process and is not cause for concern. Report to your squad and continue your regular duties. If you experience any of the symptoms I listed earlier, you are to report immediately to the medici station, day or night, regardless of the hour. You do not inform your squad, your NCOs, or your officers. You come here directly, without speaking to anyone. Is that understood?"
Understood, sir.
"Yes, sir." Dismissed. I walked out, through the canvas partitions, past the guards at the entrance, out into the Saruthis' afternoon. The heat hit me like a wall, and I stood there for a moment, blinking in the light, and the camp looked exactly the same. The same tents, the same dust, the same nothing-weed canvas. Nothing had changed. Everything had changed. Brennick was standing near the water point, filling his canteen. He looked at me when I approached. "How'd it go?" "Fine." We walked back to our tent. We didn't talk about what had happened inside the Mediki station. We didn't compare notes, because comparing notes would have meant discovering whether we'd given the same answers, and that discovery would have meant admitting that we had something to coordinate, and men who coordinate stories in the aftermath of a chaos engagement don't stay men for very long. Suven was in the tent when we arrived. She was sitting on her cot, her hands folded in her lap, staring at the canvas wall opposite. Suven, who was never still, who was always moving, always talking, always working some angle or gathering some information. Sitting still, staring at a wall. "Suvanen," I said. She looked at me. Her eyes were the same sharp, calculating eyes that tracked every exchange and catalogued every advantage and missed nothing. But they were looking at me from further away than usual, as if part of her was standing at a distance from herself, watching from somewhere behind her own face. "I'm fine," she said before I could ask. And then she smiled, and the smile was right. The shape was right. The muscles moved in the right way, but it arrived a half-second late, like a transmission with a delay. And that half...
In other words, it didn't land right. In other words, no longer human or something.
Second was the worst thing I'd seen all day. Worse than the guards in their dark uniforms. Worse than the thin man's questions. Worse than any of it. Because Suven's smile was a weapon she'd been using for 3 years, a tool as reliable and well-maintained as my last gun, and I'd never seen it misfire before. I sat on my cot and didn't say anything else. Neither did Brennick. We occupied ourselves with our own tasks, and we let the silence fill the tent. And in that silence I watched Suven, the way you watch a crack in a wall that you're not sure is growing. She hadn't moved from her cot. Her hands were in her lap, folded neatly, the way the thin man's hands had been folded on his table. That detail bothered me more than anything else. Suven's hands were never still. They were always doing something, fidgeting with a strap, rolling a low stick between her fingers, turning over a coin or a pebble or whatever small object she'd pocketed from her latest trade. I'd known her for 2 years, and I had never once seen her hands empty and still. Now they were folded the same way the interrogators had been, palm over palm, fingers interlaced, thumbs touching at the tips.
Oh, that's
the
disturbing.
Exact same configuration. As if something in that screening room had rearranged the way she held herself, replaced some small piece of her body language with something that belonged to someone else. The rest of the afternoon moved the way that time moves when you're waiting for something that hasn't arrived yet. Slow and thick and wrong. I sat on my cot and I cleaned my last gun again, because I'd already cleaned it once, but my hands needed work, and this was the only work I could give them. Brennick went back to his letter. Tolek was gone again, out somewhere in the camp, doing whatever Tolek did. The replacement soldiers from the depot occupied the far end of the tent in their usual cluster, speaking quietly among themselves in the particular dialect of Low Gothic they'd brought.
I mean, they're immune because, they weren't there because they're replacements. They weren't there during the action.
From whatever part of Vendrake they'd been recruited from. They hadn't been called for screening yet. Their slot was tomorrow. They didn't know what was coming, and I envied them for that, the way you envy anyone who hasn't yet learned the specific piece of information that's going to ruin their day. Suven hadn't moved from her cot. She was still sitting, still staring, but now her lips were moving slightly, forming words without sound. I watched her for a while, from the corner of my eye, pretending to focus on my last gun. Her lips moved, stopped, moved again. It wasn't prayer. I'd seen soldiers pray, and prayer has a rhythm, a cadence that comes from repetition, from words that have been said so many times they've worn grooves in the mouth. This was different. This was searching. Her lips were moving the way your lips move when you're trying to remember a word that's on the edge of your tongue, a word you know but can't quite reach. I thought about the thin man's list, intrusive thoughts of a repetitive or obsessive nature, auditory phenomena not attributable to external sources, a presence, awareness, or voice that you cannot account for. I thought about all of that, and then I stopped thinking about it because I could feel my mind starting to circle, starting to build a structure of implications and conclusions and fears that would be impossible to dismantle once it was complete. I'd been in the Guard long enough to know that the only way to survive information you can't act on is to refuse to process it. You don't ignore it exactly. Ignoring requires effort, requires the constant act of pushing something away. What you do is worse than ignoring. You let it settle. You let it become part of the landscape, another piece of furniture in the room, another fact about your environment that doesn't require a response. The tent is hot. The rations are bad. Your squad mate might be losing her mind to something she touched in a cave 2 months ago. You can't do anything about any of those things. So you let them be, and you clean your last gun, and you wait. 17th bell. Evening meal. The mess tent was more crowded than usual, which surprised...
How many bells are there? Hold up. My bad.
Me until I realized that the screening had disrupted the normal schedule and everyone was eating at once instead of in their assigned rotations. The noise was different. Usually the mess tent had a certain volume, a baseline hum of conversation and clattering mess kits that was loud but familiar, the sound of men fueling themselves for the next thing. Tonight it was quieter, not silent, just reduced, the way a room full of people sounds when half of them are thinking about something they can't discuss. Garen Company's section of the tent was the quietest of all. We'd all been through the screening now. We'd all sat in that chair and answered those questions and felt that scanning device vibrate against our skin. And now we were eating our evening rations, which was the same brown stuff from breakfast, but served...
If they were suspected, why let them go? Why let them go to infect the rest of the army?
Lukewarm instead of hot, and we were not talking about it. Brennick sat next to me, Suven sat across from us, and she was eating, which I took as a good sign because it was a normal thing to do, and normal things were precious currency right now. But she ate the way Brennick ate, slowly, mechanically, scraping the edges of her mess kit with a precision that wasn't hers. Suven had always eaten fast, the way she did everything, efficiently, impatiently, already planning the next task before the current one was finished. Now she scraped, and her hands, when they weren't holding the spoon, folded back into that same configuration, palm over palm, thumbs touching. She didn't speak. Not once. Not a word. Suven, who had opinions about everything, who shared them freely and at volume, sat through the entire evening meal in silence. And nobody mentioned it, because mentioning it would have meant acknowledging that the woman sitting across from us was wearing Suven's face, but had forgotten some of her habits. Tolek appeared from nowhere and sat at the end of the table, and for once he spoke more than his usual allotment. Pellic Company finished screening. 2 held back. Held back, not didn't come out, not disappeared. Held back. A softer word, a word that implied temporary, that implied they'd catch up, that implied there was a process, and the process had stages, and being held back was just one of those stages. Tolek was choosing his words carefully, which meant he knew more than he was saying, which meant the truth was worse than held back. "Make 6 total," Brennick said quietly. 4 from 3rd Company, 2 from Pellic, plus whoever they catch from ours. Catch was the wrong word and the right word at the same time. It implied guilt. It implied that being held back was a consequence of something you'd done or something you'd become,
It was a morale
rather than
breaker.
something that had been done to you. But that was how the God worked. You were responsible for your own corruption the way you were responsible for your own kit. If your kit was wrong, you should have maintained it better. If your mind was wrong, you should have resisted harder. The Imperium did not accept that proximity to the enemy's weapons could damage you in ways that were not your fault. In the Imperium's view, the faithful could not be truly harmed by the arch-enemy. If you were harmed, your faith was insufficient. If your faith was insufficient, you were the problem. And problems get solved. I ate my brown stuff. I drank my recaf. Brennick finished his letter and sealed it and tucked it into the pocket of his tunic against his chest, where he always carried them before walking them to the mail pile. He patted it once, a small, private gesture, confirming that it was there, the way you'd pat a pocket to check for your keys. I wondered who he was writing to. I wondered if they were alive. I wondered if Brennick wondered the same thing and wrote the letters anyway, the way I imagined my mother opening mine, knowing full well that imagining was all I'd ever have. Evening. The camp settled into its nighttime configuration. The perimeter lights came on, harsh white lumen bars mounted on poles along the
Now would be like the worst time for everything, because you know what? One of the reasons why people doom scroll is because, well, it's nighttime. Right? You have nothing but your thoughts, and you know what? After COVID, after the lockdowns, it could be like the scariest thing out there, is to be alone with your own thoughts. And yeah, things are definitely gonna go down.
camp's edge, making everything beyond the wire look darker by contrast. Guard shifts rotated. The generators kept humming. The Vox played the evening devotional, longer and more somber than the morning one, a reading about the Emperor's vigil over mankind during the hours of darkness. I had free time. That's what the schedule said, 18th bell to 21st bell. In practice, free time meant you could do anything that didn't require leaving the camp or having fun in any way that the commissariat might find objectionable, which ruled out most things that actually qualified as fun. Some men gambled, some men slept, some sat and talked about nothing, which was the guard's second greatest speciality after waiting. I walked. I walked the camp the way I walked the perimeter that morning, checking things, looking at things, using my eyes because my eyes were the only part of me that still felt like they were working properly. I walked past the officers' quarters and heard voices inside, clipped and professional, discussing schedules and logistics. The armory came next, Losh visible through the open flap, doing his evening inventory with his one good hand, mouthing numbers. Beyond that, the motor pool, where the company's 3 remaining Chimera transports sat silent and scarred, and the Mechanicus adept assigned to maintain them was whispering to their hulls in binary, anointing engine panels with sacred oils. I respected him without knowing him, the way you respect anyone who has a purpose they believe in, because belief is a luxury in the Guard. The next building along my route was the Munitorium Chapel. Every guard camp has one, regardless of size, regardless of location, regardless of whether anyone actually uses it. This one was a standard field model, a prefabricated structure the shape and size of a storage container, made from pressed metal panels stamped with the Imperial Aquila and bolted together by ecclesiarchy laborers, who'd arrived with the same transport as the rest of the camp equipment. The door was closed but not locked. It was never locked. The ecclesiarchy believed that the emperor's house should be open to all at all hours, which was a noble sentiment somewhat undermined by the fact that the emperor's house in this case was a metal box that smelled like tallow and old sweat. I almost walked past. I should have walked past. But something caught my eye, a mark on the door panel, near the bottom edge, low enough that you'd miss it unless you were looking at the ground. which I was, because looking at the ground is what you do when you're walking through a camp at night and trying not to draw attention to yourself. It was a scratch, a line in the metal, not deep, not deliberate looking, the kind of mark that could have been made by a boot or a crate corner or a piece of equipment being dragged past. But it curved. It curved the same way, the same arc, the same radius, the same starting angle, the first stroke of the first marking. I kept walking. I didn't stop. I didn't look again. I didn't crouch down and trace it with my finger, although part of me wanted to, and that wanting was worse than the mark itself, because it meant the shapes weren't just in my hands and my dreams. They were in my impulses. They were becoming urges, and urges are harder to fold away than thoughts. Near the chapel, I passed 2 men from Pellic Company sitting on ammunition crates, sharing a elho stick. They nodded at me as I passed. I nodded back. That was the extent of our interaction. 2 guardsmen, acknowledging each other's existence, confirming that we were both still here, still vertical, still part of the machine. No words, no information, no obligation. Just a nod. I'm alive. You're alive. Carry on. My route took me past the commissariat tent, which was a structure that everyone in the camp knew the exact location of and went out of their way to avoid. Commissar Edelbrecht was not inside. I knew this because I could see her 20 meters ahead, walking between the tent rows with one of the dark uniformed men from the Medici station. They were talking, not arguing, not briefing, talking, the way 2 professionals talk when they're comparing notes on a shared project. Edelbrecht's posture was wrong. Not tense, not defensive, not the straight-backed authority that she carried through the camp, the way other people carry weapons. She was leaning slightly toward the man, listening, nodding, deferring. Commissar Edelbrecht, who didn't defer to anyone below the rank of colonel and most people above it, was deferring to a man in a dark uniform who wasn't guard and wasn't commissariat and wasn't any rank that I recognized. Whatever these people were, whatever this screening was, it sat above the commissariat in whatever invisible hierarchy governed the Imperium's treatment of its soldiers. That meant it sat above everything. That meant there was nothing between us and them. No appeal, no process, no chain of command that could be climbed. They had Edelbrecht's cooperation, and Edelbrecht was the last authority that stood between a guardsman and whatever the Imperium wanted to do with him. They turned a corner and were gone. I moved on. I walked past the Medici station. I didn't mean to walk past the Medici station. My route through the camp didn't require it, and I could have taken 3 different paths that would have avoided it entirely. But my feet brought me there, and I told myself it was because the station was centrally located and walking around it would have been inconvenient. And that was a lie, and I knew it was a lie, and I walked.
It's like every 5 minutes he's telling himself that everything's gonna be alright. But then again, at a certain point, what else are you supposed to do but tell yourself that everything's gonna be alright and just lie to yourself?
Past it anyway. The guards were still there. The same 2 men in dark uniforms, standing at the entrance, las guns ready, faces lit by the lumen strip above the doorway. The extra tent sections were lit from inside, a soft glow through the canvas, and I could see shadows moving against the fabric. Figures, walking between objects. The shadows were wrong in a way I couldn't quite articulate. They moved normally, human shapes doing human things, but the angles were off, the proportions slightly distorted by the curve of the canvas. It was like watching people through water, their outlines wavering, stretching, contracting. It was just canvas and light. I knew that. Light through canvas always distorts shadows. There was nothing unusual about it. But one of the shadows was sitting, just sitting in a chair or on a cot, not moving. A figure lit from behind, perfectly still. I watched it for maybe 10 seconds. It didn't move, not a shift, not a breath, not a twitch. People move. Even sleeping people move. Even unconscious people move. The only people who don't move at all are people who aren't people anymore. I turned away from the Medici station. I was heading back toward the tent rows when I heard something from the gap between two supply containers near the engineering stores. A metallic click, soft but distinct, the sound of a clasp being opened. I looked. Habit, noticing. Holek was crouched in the shadows, a pack open in front of him. Not his regulation kit bag, a smaller pack, civilian make, the kind that gets confiscated if the NCOs find it. Inside were water purification tablets, a lot of them. A folded map on real paper, a compass, ration bars that weren't guard issue. The stub pistol was there too, nestled beside the map in its worn leather holster. He looked up. Our eyes met. Neither of us spoke. In that silence, we had a conversation that would have taken 10 minutes with words. He was planning to leave. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. Before the screening caught up with him. Before whatever was happening in the Medici station happened to him. He was going to walk into the Ceruthis wilderness and take his chances with the empty landscape and whatever was left of the secessionist holdouts, because those chances were better than a metal chair and a man with clean hands deciding whether he was still human enough to keep. I looked at the pack. I looked at him. I moved on. The second secret I'd collected that night. I walked back to the tent and sat on my cot and started cleaning my las gun for the third time that day. Brennick gave me a look. I said nothing. He said nothing. The evening devotional played on the Vox, and the camp kept breathing its slow, mechanical breath. 21st bell. Lights out for our section. The lumen strip in our tent flickered and died, and the only light was what leaked in from outside. The white glow of the perimeter lamps cut into strips by the tent flaps. 12 men arranged themselves on their cots, the nightly choreography of shifting and settling and finding a position that was tolerable if not comfortable. The new men from the replacement depot fell asleep quickly, the way new soldiers always do, because they hadn't yet learned what experienced soldiers know, which is that sleep is not rest. Sleep is just another environment, and some environments are more dangerous than others. I lay on my back and stared at the canvas ceiling. Nothing weed. The color of everything and nothing. The color of the Imperial Guard. I thought about Vendrake, about the dye works, about the vats of color, the blues and reds and greens and yellows, the brilliant living colors that we mixed and fixed and applied to cloth that would go out into the world and make someone's life slightly less gray. I thought about how strange it was that I'd spent my life before the Guard, surrounded by color, drowning in it. And now I lived in a world that had exactly one shade, and that shade was the color of all the colors mixed together into nothing. Brennick turned on his cot. I heard his breathing change, the slow rhythm of wakefulness replaced by the irregular pattern of early sleep. He muttered something. I listened. It was habit by now, listening to Brennick sleep. Not because I was monitoring him, not because I was looking for signs or symptoms, or any of the things on the thin man's list. Just because the sound of someone sleeping next to you is a kind of company, and company is better than the alternative, which is being alone with the tent and the ceiling, and the thoughts that only come out when the lights go off. He muttered again. This time I caught a word. Or not a word exactly, but a sound that was shaped like a word, that had the edges of a word, that almost resolved into something recognizable before it dissolved. And it was the same sound, repeated, the same pattern of syllables, over and over, like a key trying to find a lock. I'd heard it before. Not from Brennick, from myself. In my own dreams. In the dreams about the cave walls. In the dreams where the markings shifted and rearranged. And almost formed something you could read. Something that was reaching for meaning the way a drowning man reaches for air. And you could feel it getting closer, night by night, session by session, the pattern becoming clearer, the shapes becoming more defined, and you knew. You knew with a certainty that went beyond thought, that one night the shapes would resolve and the word would form, and you would understand, and the understanding would be the end of something, and you didn't know what. I rolled over. I faced the canvas wall. I closed my eyes. In the distance, the camp generators hummed. A servitor clicked past the tent on its night cycle route, its mechanical feet striking the packed earth in a pattern that was almost regular, but not quite, a rhythm with a flaw in it, a stutter every few beats. Click, 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 silence, click, over and over, moving away, fading, gone.
Can chaos, whatchamacallit, can chaos actually influence servitors? I mean, isn't that the point? Everything was removed from them. Everything that can be influenced by thought or feelings. Can they be influenced? Because I was watching a few clips of that Christian Bale film, Equilibrium, that the one that tried to complete with the Matrix and everything. So everything was about the feelings or trying to remove the feelings. So the thing is, if you don't have any feelings, can chaos actually corrupt it? And the thing is, in that particular film with Christian Bale, what's the point of making kids if you're not going to enjoy the act of making kids? So, anyways, just questions.
I told myself to sleep. My body was tired. My hands ached from cleaning a weapon that was already clean. My back ached from digging and carrying and sitting in a metal chair in a medici station while a man with clean hands decided whether I was still human enough to be useful. I was tired and I wanted to sleep, and I told myself to sleep, and my mind refused because my mind was doing the thing that it did in the dark, the thing that I couldn't stop it doing no matter how hard I tried, which was assembling pieces. Vasix as servitor, the one that had stopped outside our tent and stared with dead optical lenses at the canvas flap where we slept. The 4 men from 3rd Company who didn't come out. The 2 from Pellic. Suven's delayed smile, her hands folded the way the interrogators were. Brennick's dream words, the thin man's data slate, the stylus moving, the mark that wasn't clear. The shadow in the medici station that didn't move. Commissar Edelbreck, deferring to a man in a dark uniform she shouldn't have had to defer to. The extra tent sections and the guards and the antiseptic smell and the fact that someone, somewhere, had planned this weeks ago, had sent specialists on a 3-day transport, had allocated resources and personnel and canvas and authorization for something that went far beyond a routine medical check. All of those pieces, lying on the floor of my mind like components of a weapon I didn't want to assemble, and my mind was picking them up anyway, one by one, fitting them together. And the shape they were making was the shape of a question I didn't want to ask. What happens to the ones who don't pass? It's a simple question, a practical question, the kind of question a guardsman should be able to answer, because guardsmen deal in practical matters. But the answer was in the spaces between the things I'd seen, in the gap between held back and didn't come out, in the distance between the chair in the medici station and the servitor route by the southern latrine. The answer was the thing I'd been telling myself not to think about all day, the door I'd been refusing to open. And now it was dark, and the camp was quiet, and Brennick was dreaming words that came from a cave, and I was lying on my cot with the answer pressing down on me like the Ceruthi's heat, and I couldn't push it away anymore. They don't pass, and they don't go home. They don't get discharged. They don't get transferred to a rear echelon unit or a medical facility on some distant world. They stay. They stay right here in the camp, in the Medici station, in the hands of men with clean fingers and dark uniforms who have the authority to decide what a damaged soldier is worth and the tools to convert that soldier into something the Imperium can still use. They go in as men and they come out as resources. Or they don't come out at all. Or they come out different. Like Suven, with the right face and the right smile, but the timing off by half a second, and you're supposed to pretend you don't notice. And you do pretend, because pretending is surviving, and surviving is all there is. I thought about the morning, about Fourth Bell, about the devotional playing on the Vox, with its skips and its jumps, and Brennick mouthing the words in his sleep, and the tent smelling like canvas and sweat, and 12 men who didn't have enough room. I thought about standing at the foot of my cot and buttoning my tunic and clasping my webbing and checking. I thought about roll call and my name being called and saying present and meaning it, meaning I'm here, I'm still here, I'm still Pellin Court, I'm still a man, I still have a name that means something, even if the only thing it means is that I'm a line on a logistics manifest that hasn't been crossed out yet. I thought about tomorrow. Another day, another Fourth Bell, another devotional, the same recording, the same skips, another roll call, more names, most of them answered, some of them not, and the ones that don't get answered will be noted, filed, processed, and forgotten, and the rest of us will eat our brown stuff and clean our loss guns, and walk the perimeter and tell each other that everything is fine, because what else can we do? What else is there? I must have slept because I woke up, and waking up requires sleeping first. I don't remember the transition. One moment I was lying on my back, thinking about the screening and the servitors and the shadow in the Medici tent, and the next moment I was somewhere else. Not somewhere real, somewhere behind my eyes. The caves, the Torod Valley caves, tunnel complex Theta 7, the walls closing in around me like fingers curling into a fist. The markings were there, cut deep into the stone, lines and curves and shapes that were not letters and not pictures and not anything that had a word in Gothic. And they were moving. Not the way real things move, not with physics and force and direction. They were moving the way meaning moves, rearranging themselves not in space, but in significance, each line connecting to the next in a pattern that was almost visible, almost comprehensible, almost there. I could feel it, the way you feel a word on the tip of your tongue, the shape of the understanding pressing against the inside of my skull, like something trying to hatch. And I was reaching for it, not with my hands, with something deeper, something that didn't have a name, something that was mine and not mine at the same time. And it was so close. It was right there. One more second, one more fraction of a fraction, and the pattern would complete, and I would know what the markings said, and the knowing would be like a door opening into a room that had always been there. A room inside my own head that I'd never noticed because the door had been locked, and now the key was turning, and I woke up. For real this time. Heart pounding, mouth dry, fists clenched around the edges of my cot. The tent was dark. The perimeter lamps striped the canvas with white light. The generators hummed. Everything was the same. Everything was normal. Just a dream. Just the caves again. The same dream I'd been having for weeks. The same almost revelation that never quite resolved. The same reaching that never quite reached. Just a dream. Except Brennick was sitting up. Not the slow, groaning rise of a man waking from sleep. He was upright, spine straight, head level, as if he'd been placed in that position by someone who knew exactly how a sitting man should look, but had slightly misunderstood the mechanics. His eyes were open. I could see them in the striped light, the reflected white of the perimeter lamps in his pupils. and they were not blinking. They were focused on the canvas wall in front of him, the same wall he'd stared at 1,000 times, the same nothing-weed gray. But he was looking at it the way the thin man in the medici station had looked at me, searching, measuring, reading something that wasn't there. "Brennick," I whispered. Nothing.
Here we go.
No reaction, no shift, no blink, no acknowledgement that a voice had spoken his name. He sat on his cot like a statue carved from the same material as the camp, gray-brown and motionless, and part of the furniture. His hands were in his lap, palms up, fingers slightly curled, and his lips were moving. The same silent words, the same pattern, but faster now, the movements tighter, more urgent, as if whatever he was trying to say was getting closer to being said, as if the lock was almost turning. "Brennick," louder this time. Not a whisper, a voice. My voice, cracking at the edges because my throat was dry and my heart was doing something it wasn't supposed to do, and the tent felt smaller than it had a minute ago, the walls closer, the ceiling lower, as if the canvas itself was leaning in to listen. His head turned, slowly, not the quick, natural movement of a man responding to his name, but a deliberate rotation, measured, mechanical, the way
a deliberate rotation. So, Linda Blair, The Exorcist.
Turret tracks a target. His eyes found me. They were his eyes, Brennick's eyes, the same brown eyes that I'd seen every day for 4 years across mess tables and firing trenches and the narrow space between our cots. But they were looking at me from somewhere else, from somewhere behind Brennick, through Brennick, using Brennick the way you'd use a window. "I can almost read them," he said. His voice was wrong. Not a different voice, not someone else's voice. His voice, absolutely his voice, but stripped of something essential, the way a color looks when you drain the warmth from it, when you take a red and pull out the yellow, and what's left is a red that's technically the same, but feels like a different color entirely. It was Brennick's voice with something removed, and I didn't know what the something was, but its absence was the most frightening thing I'd ever heard. And I'd heard screaming men and dying men and the sound that air makes when it's being displaced by something too large to exist. "Brennick, you're dreaming. Lie down. The walls in the caves, the markings. I can almost read them, Court. Every night I get closer. Every night the shapes get clearer. They're trying to tell us something. They were trying to tell us something and we left before they could finish, and now they're finishing in here." He touched his own head, gently, the way you'd touch something fragile. "In here where it's quiet enough to hear." I got off my cot. I moved toward him. The tent was silent around us. 12 men sleeping, or pretending to sleep, or lying in the dark with their eyes closed and their ears open, listening to a conversation they'd deny hearing in the morning. I crouched next to Brennick's cot, and I put my hand on his shoulder, and the skin under his tunic was cold, genuinely cold, cold the way stone is cold, cold the way the cave walls had been cold when I touched them 4 months ago in a tunnel that should have been warm underground but wasn't. "You need to stop talking," I said. My voice was quiet and hard, and I was surprised by how hard it was, how much it sounded like Henniger's voice, how much it sounded like the voice of a man who has decided something and won't be moved. "You need to lie down and close your eyes and stop talking, and in the morning you need to be normal. You need to eat your breakfast and clean your kit and answer your name at roll call, and be normal, Brennick, because if you're not normal, they'll take you. The men in the dark uniforms will come for you the way they came for the 4 in 3rd Company, and you'll go into that medici station and you won't come out. Not as you, maybe not at all. Do you understand me?" He looked at me. The distance in his eyes flickered, and for a moment he was there, really there. Brennick from Sullen Reach, who ate slowly and wrote letters and dreamed words in the dark. He was there, and he was frightened, and the fear was human, and the humanness of it was like a hand reaching back through the window. "I can't make it stop," he said. "The shapes. They don't go away when I wake up. They used to go away. Now they stay. They're getting louder, Court. I don't know how a shape gets louder, but that's what's happening. They're louder and they're closer, and I think if I could just—" "No," I squeezed his shoulder. Hard enough to hurt. "You don't reach for it. You don't try to read it. You don't think about it. You push it down and you fold it up and you put it with all the other things you don't think about and you leave it there. That's how you survive. That's the only way you survive." He was quiet for a long time. His lips stopped moving. His eyes were still wrong, still too far away, still looking at something that I couldn't see. But the rigid, mechanical quality of his posture softened, and he was a man again, not a window, not a receiver. Just a man sitting on a cot in a tent in a camp, on a world that had tried its best to break him and hadn't quite succeeded. Yet, he lay down, slowly, like a man remembering how his body worked. He pulled his blanket up to his chest and folded his hands over it, the letter still in his tunic pocket, pressed against his ribs. A corner of the envelope was visible, poking out from under the fold of the fabric. In the striped light from the perimeter lamps, I could see the edge of the paper inside and the marks on it. Not all of them were handwriting. Some of them were curves, small, tight, drawn in the same ink as the words, tucked between the lines like annotations, like marginalia, like something that had crept into his letter while he was writing it and nestled itself among the words he'd meant to send to whoever he was sending them to. The shapes I'd scraped out of the pillbox that morning, the shapes on the chapel door, the shapes on the walls of Theta 7. In Brennick's letter, woven into whatever he'd been trying to say to whoever he still believed was listening. Court. Yeah. Did you see them too, in the dream? The markings. I didn't answer. I went back to my cot.
You can't
I
say
lay
yes.
down. I stared at the ceiling.
Because the worst thing is that someone might snitch.
The nothing weed canvas, the color of everything mixed together into nothing, the color of the Imperial Guard, the color of my life. For 4 years, and however many more years, the Imperium decided I was useful enough to keep breathing. I stared at that ceiling and I made a decision. Not a big decision, not a brave decision. The kind of small, ugly, practical decision that guardsmen make every day. The kind that doesn't get commemorated or even noticed. I decided not to report Brennick. The thin man in the Mediki station had told me to report any symptoms immediately, directly, without speaking to anyone. And Brennick was symptomatic. Brennick was everything on that list. And reporting him would be the right thing, the correct thing, the thing that a loyal servant of the Imperium should do when a comrade shows signs of arch-enemy corruption. Reporting him might even save him, if save meant treatment,
No.
if save meant help, if save meant anything other than what I knew it meant, which was a chair in that station, and a scanning device, and a man with clean hands making a mark on a data slate, and then a shadow on a canvas wall that didn't move. But reporting Brennick would also mean explaining how I knew. And explaining how I knew would mean admitting that I'd been watching, that I'd been listening, that I'd recognized the symptoms because I knew what they looked like from the inside. It would mean telling them about the pillbox, about the curve in the ferrocrete, about the shapes behind my eyelids, about the mark on the chapel door that I'd recognized in the dark the way you recognize your own handwriting. Reporting Brennick would mean reporting myself, and I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. Not until I knew what they did with the ones who didn't pass, and I already knew what they did with them, and that knowledge was the real reason I stayed silent. I decided not to report him. Not because I was brave, and not entirely because he was my friend, although he was. I decided this because Brennick was the man who slept on the cot next to mine, who wrote letters to someone he might never see again,
Because he was a brother.
who had stood next to me in trenches and firing lines and the entrance to a cave that smelled like a color that shouldn't exist. And because, if our positions were reversed, I would want him to do the same. And because the Imperial Guard had taken my home and my name and my color and my future and turned me into a line on a manifest, and it was not going to take the only thing I had left, which was the ability to choose who I was willing to lose and who I wasn't. It was a bad decision. I knew that. It was selfish and dangerous, and it violated direct orders from a man who had the authority to make me into something less than a man if he found out. It was the kind of decision that gets people killed, that gets squads killed, that gets companies killed. It was the kind of decision that the commissariat exists to prevent. I made it anyway. I made it the way I made every decision in the Guard, quietly, in the dark, alone, with no one to witness it and no one to validate it and no one to share the weight. I made it, and I closed my eyes and I waited for fourth bell. The generators hummed, the perimeter lamps glowed. Somewhere in the camp, a servitor walked its route. Click, click, click. Silence, click. Somewhere in the Medici station, men in dark uniforms made notes on data slates about soldiers who had entered caves and come out carrying something invisible. Somewhere on Vendrake, maybe, a woman I hadn't spoken to in 4 years was sleeping in a hab block in Block 18. And she didn't know where I was, and I didn't know if she was alive, and between us was a distance measured not in kilometers, but in everything that had happened since the last time I'd been a person instead of a soldier. Brennick slept. His breathing evened out, his lips stopped moving. Whatever had been reaching for him had let go, or retreated, or was just resting, gathering itself for the next attempt. I listened to him breathe, and I thought about the morning. Fourth bell, the devotional, the skip in the recording, roll call, Court, Pellin, present, breakfast, the brown stuff, the perimeter, the wire, the pillboxes, the quiet. Another day. A normal day. I closed my eyes. The shapes were there behind my eyelids, faint but present, the echo of the dream I'd woken from, the cave markings, the lines and curves, the almost meaning. I could feel them the way you feel a bruise, a dull pressure, not painful but insistent, reminding you that something had happened, that something had touched you, that you were marked in a way that wouldn't show on the surface. I told myself to sleep, that tomorrow would be normal, that Brennick would be normal, and Suven would be normal, and I would be normal, and we would do the things that normal soldiers do between battles, which is wait and maintain and eat and sleep, and pretend that the waiting is the hard part, when really the hard part is everything you carry while you're waiting. I told myself all of that. And some of it was true. And some of it wasn't. And I slept. Fourth bell came. The devotional played. The recording skipped in the same 2 places. Brennick mouthed the words in his sleep. I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling and waited for the corporal to come through. It was a new day, a normal day. Just like the last one, just like the next. I got up.
Okay, so it seems that we have some pretty huge news in regards to Fillion.
Alright. Anyways, you guys, that is all the time we have. Oh, yeah, Fillion news. That's all the time we have for tonight. I wish to just do an outro so we'd know. And anyways, that's all the time we had for tonight. Thank you guys for joining me. I'll see you guys on Friday, alright? We're gonna do Blue Archival on Friday.